All right.
Yeah, I'm checking out some things. James Smith and Q.
All right, guys. So another week, and boy, I mean, we got football today. We had football yesterday. We had Thanksgiving yesterday, and we got more football tomorrow. I'm joined by Chris Griffin of the Horns Down podcast, Jance of Jance Sports. Guys, how are we doing this? Oh my God, no. All right, all right. How do we get him out of here? All right, there we go. Perfect. Now the
Wait, was
podcast
that an
can
Auburn
officially.
flag? What was
He had
that?
an Auburn flag
What was
back
that?
there. He had an Auburn flag.
Oh,
Look,
come
I'm
on.
gonna let him back in just for you to see, and we're gonna take him out.
Oh no, oh, dog.
Oh,
Come on, man.
that's foul. That's foul.
That's super
That's
foul,
foul,
dog.
Chris.
Super foul.
That's foul. Well, I'm gonna start with Jance because that put me in a bad mood. Jance, how you doing this evening? That's
I'm a,
foul.
I'm all right, man. I'm all right. I just came back from the that watch party, man. U.S. England got to support the home country. Should have won the game, but it is what it is. But no, I'm glad to be here. I'm not
Chris,
glad to see Chris. Chris, you put me in a bad. You just put me in a bad mood now. Come on, dog.
Chris, how you doing?
Hey, Boomer Sooner, guys. Boomer Sooner to you all, to everybody on here watching. As you can see, go War Eagle. Let's get it this weekend, man. It's a great weekend for football, man.
I just don't even know what to say right now.
Where did you get that from? You order off Amazon or something?
Don't worry
Did you
about
order that specifically
Don't-
for this purpose?
it. Don't worry about it, guys. I got friends in high places. There are some Auburn fans in Oklahoma. How? I don't know, but
I don't know whether to be upset or impressed. I'm teetering between the two right now, and I'm really not sure where I'm going to land. At certain parts, I might boot him out the stream just because I'm teetering on upset. But we're, we're going to start on recruiting this evening because it's been a big week for recruiting. Chris, I want to hear from you, man, because with Oklahoma this week, you got several steps forward, 4 big wins, and then you took a big step back in the Anthony Evans flip. So talk to us about Oklahoma recruiting right now, some of the names to keep an eye on, and just kind of the state of this week.
man, honestly, you got back on the right track with a lot of recruits. We're talking about DJ Hicks. There's a lot of positive things coming out about that. Peyton Bowens, already know, and then the rest of the cast. Everything was great until kind of today. But just to kind of go backwards, let's talk about it first. The Oklahoma State game kind of changed. It helped change the narrative that you're seeing. A lot of these kids you could hear from PG, from Jay. A lot of these kids are saying, "Hey, that doesn't really affect me. I am committed to Oklahoma, committed to Brett Venables, committed to Todd Bates. I want to be here. I still want to be here. Everything is fine." But with this Evans thing, though, it's just crazy, you know. And going throughout the week, we picked up Taylor Wine, we picked up Ashley Sanders, Sanders, and then we also picked up the commitment from who do we get? Oh, we got the kid from Notre Dame.
Kendall Dolby and then Jacob Lacey, yeah.
Exactly. So with those, you get Dolby, you get a guy who can come in from day one and I believe can help that secondary, and he can play multiple positions out there however you want him. I think he's kind of like a Damian Harmon right now. I think that's who that's his comp right now, in my opinion. And that's just going to add more competition because you obviously, I think we're all wanting to see what Justin Harrington is going to do as well. Let's see. DJ Hicks, it's positive reviews. A lot of people saying that he could flip at any time. Peyton Bowens is the same thing. You saw the crystal balls come in. Those are guys that can all come in day one and possibly be starters or possibly be heavy in the rotation. The kid from Notre Dame that we just got as a commitment, that's been something that's kind of been out there for the last 3 or 4 months now. And you see the result of that. And I think that he's going to be big next year. I think he's going to be an interesting piece. So I'm interested in seeing how he's going to pan out in the spring, how he's going to look in the spring, how he's going to look with Schmitty's, strength and conditioning regimen. But going back to the obvious of what happened today, this flip kind of came out of nowhere. But from everything that we've seen, and you see in the chat and all that, it seems like Evans has kind of been on that bandwagon for the longest, at least the Georgia train, right? So I don't know. It's a loss because it's somebody that a lot of people were really excited about, and it's a loss to this offense because what we need right now, obviously we have Mims, we have Stoops, we have Farouk. Those guys are great, But at the same time, outside of that, what else have we seen? We see the freshman, the walk-on freshman that's played a little bit. Gibson has played here in spurts, but he's looked more like a freshman than anything. And you thought that you would have a real impact from him. Nick Anderson has been injured. Caden Helms, even though he's a tight end, he's still kind of a hybrid tight end that you're trying to fit into the system. Just another, he's a freshman. He's been out there a couple of times. So you need a guy like that to add to this Levy offense because Ty Jance, we've all talked about it. Look, Levy needs a variety of pieces in this offense. It can't just be one thing. You may come out there with a package where you have Farouk, you have Gibson, but you also have that explosive wide receiver in a Petaway, in a Anthony Evans, and putting both of them out there, two guys who are just fast, lightning fast. That is how this offense has always been successful because it's fed off of guys like that, especially in Baylor with Mills and other guys like that. Tyquan Thornton, guys who are just blazing fast, being able to run that system. It helps. So I'm not going to say that this is a big loss, but it's definitely a loss that we'll feel if we can't go out there and work the portal or possibly find another guy.
Which
23 class.
Jimmy right here asks the question, right? Do we go after another, we as in OU, does OU go after another wide receiver or do you get one from the portal? Chris, what are you thinking about that?
I'll go a different route. We got to get a wide receiver coach. I like what LaDainian Washington has done, but I think a name out there, Samples. I think he's a guy. I know my uncle and I have talked about him quite a bunch. We think that he'd be great. He's in the NFL right now, but I think he's put out some feelers as far as what he wants to do. I think he'd be great. Obviously, we would love to get Malcolm Kelly. That's kind of yet to be seen as far as what's going to happen on that. And, TCU has already let it be known they're going to match whatever offer he possibly gets.
Their wide receiver play has been very, very – and it's not just one guy, right? We talk about Johnston, but they got a few guys.
Yeah. I think some people have talked about – the Savion kid. Some people have talked about the Jeff Scott. I keep forgetting where he's at right now, particularly. I just saw it, but he's familiar with Venables. He's familiar with kind of some of the principles that they would like to do. So I think that it'd be interesting if you can go out there and get a coach like that. But I would probably go with Samples because I think he has a lot of Texas connections that could get us in on these kids, and possibly he could come in and that could be the final nail because with a guy like Anthony Evans, maybe he can flip him back. So I don't know, but working that portal is not going to be the worst thing either because you're going to be able, especially if your NIL is right, you're going to be able to, I wouldn't necessarily say quote unquote poach somebody, but you'll be able to go and get somebody who's going to be more than serviceable. So you got to go out there and fill those voids right now. But this is just another opportunity to go and find, like Brent Venable said, another diamond in the rough if you can, but you kind of got to figure something out. It's not time to panic per se. But it's definitely time to kind of see, okay, we got to jump on something now.
This is one where you look at the loss and you're like, man, I really was looking forward to him in the class. This stings. But at the end of the day, there's some names that I'm going to discuss. But before I get there, Jance, I got to hear from you, man, and not just about Oklahoma recruiting. We can certainly refocus back on that. I want to hear from recruiting in general. Bama's hosting a big weekend this weekend. Right before we get on here, guys, Tennessee, another 5-star added into their class, 5-star defensive lineman, huge win for the Volunteers. We've seen a big week in recruiting. Jance, what are you thinking when you see all of these moves in recruiting? What's speaking to you right now?
I'm just hoping and praying to God that we can retain some of our guys. Obviously, there's the biggest one was the Justice Haynes chatter that potentially he could, that Georgia was starting to kind of come up a little bit and that they could potentially flip him up. But then Justice Haynes, he kind of shut that down and says that's kind of just news to me. I'm still committed. Again, we're gonna have to find out and see what happens signing day. That's been heating up for weeks now, but obviously, if Justice is saying it, then I'm gonna go with this word. But we'll see what happens when it comes to signing day. Obviously, the biggest weekend definitely for Alabama recruiting, not just because you're playing against Auburn. That flag right there, right behind Chris.
That's just disgusting.
Which is just absolutely disgusting. But yeah, this is a huge weekend, especially because a lot of the in-state guys from 2023, 2024, and 2025 are going to be at this game. So this is a very, very important game. Most likely, again, you look at guys like James Smith, who we need interior guys. We got around three guys. We got around three or four commitments from the interior defensive line, but that's just not good enough. We're going to have a lot of turnover next year because of Byron Young and
we need that big name.
You do. You need that disruptor, and that's one thing we did not have this year. Otis could be that person.
I think he will.
I believe he has the most upside out of anybody there, but we got to have more talent. We need a Jalen Carter. We need that Jordan Davis. We need a Quentin Williams type of player, that huge disruptor, because our best interior defensive lineman was Will Anderson. We keep trying to rush in the interior defensive line, demanding double teams, and no one's taking advantage of those opportunities. So we need it. This is a huge recruitment weekend. Again, if we can't get Rousseau, that's fine. It is what it is. I think he's going to go to Georgia anyway. But it's James Smith. It's some of those other guys that we can focus on, some of our priority targets. But, I mean, for the most part, really besides James Smith, I think this class is set. We got the skill position.
Retain Caleb Downs. That's the mission right now.
That's Caleb Downs is the biggest question mark. Because Ohio State they're pushing hard. I mean, they are coming for him really, really hard. And Brian Branch is going to be gone. There's no doubt about that in my mind. Malachi Moore.
He's going to get a good grade.
Yeah, Malachi Moore. DeMarco Hellams, please be gone. Jordan Battle, I think Jordan Battle is going to be gone. So our safety play needs to get better. We're going to be a little bit more thin compared to what we used to be in the past. So again, if Caleb Downs, if he comes to the University of Alabama, he's going to start day one. I believe that because we don't have the depth, Ty. We don't have the depth in the secondary. So
I'll one up you, man. And Chris, you've heard me say this. Jance, you've heard me say this. I think Caleb Downs is a top 5 player in the nation. When I watch his film, I think he is one of the most complete football players in all of high school football. His football IQ is through the roof. He obviously watches film. He's very well coached. Range is very good. This is a phenomenal safety class. Let's be very honest here. You have Caleb Downs. You have Peyton Bowen. Freaks. I mean, freaky at that safety position. You have Makari Vickers. You have Tony Mitchell. I mean, 4 names right there, guys. Book them. They're all going to be phenomenal players. Great safety class. But I can't agree with you more, man. When we look at the defensive secondary, specifically the safety position, we need that. And Caleb Downs, to me, that's why I'm going to let you get back to it. I think he is the most important prospect currently in the class that we have got to keep.
Yeah, because despite us having the number 1 recruiting class, Ty, we all know there's probably going to be like maybe 4 or 5 guys in the freshman class is going to make a huge contribution to the team. And that's why we need a Caleb Downs player, because that's an instant starter. That's an instant, huge impactful player. Again, our offensive line class is, I mean, that's what it is, this field, but none of those guys, none of them, unless one of them could surprise, but I just don't really see it. I see a lot of rawness. I see at least 2 or 3 years of development from this offensive line. The defensive line, I think the same thing, unless we can retain a James Smith. I think James Smith could be potential instant starter, impactful player for you. But no, you're right. Caleb Downs, Justice Haynes, those are the guys that you need to retain.
Richard Young.
Richard Young. I mean, this running back class, Richard Young, especially because Jahmyr Gibbs is gone and because we don't have a clear-cut answer. Now, maybe that's Jace. Jace has had 2 really good games in a row.
I think it is Jace, but how do we supplement Jace? What do we give him?
Exactly. And Rodale just doesn't. He's not.
He's nice, but it's just we do need a bit more depth, assured depth outside. I think he could be that guy, but hey, we've all said this. Competition is a good thing. It's a good thing.
Exactly. Richard Young and Justice Haynes just has more upside, in my opinion. Like I said, we got Emmanuel Henderson, but he's more of an athlete than simply just a pure running back. But no, we got it. We have to retain the instant impactful players as freshmen. Those guys have got to. We got to retain it. Again, if we can add a couple or more players to this class, that's great. But I'm not really worried about the recruiting rankings. I think every Bama fan should know at this point the recruiting rankings is not really that's not the end all be all for winning national titles. But we gotta. I can't state this enough. We have got to retain those instant impactful players. I'm worried about retaining Caleb Downs, Justice Haynes, those guys compared to simply getting a James Smith or maybe a Q. If we can get them, great, but we need to retain. This is a huge recruiting weekend for us this week.
Completely agree, man. Completely agree. Now, I'm going to kind of go big picture again because there are several big names on the board in terms of recruiting. But also, guys, and Chris, specifically to you, I have a question for you. We were talking about this before. Oklahoma has a need at the wide receiver position. I think we would agree. We don't know what the future with Weiss will be. And I would imagine Mims is going to go to the draft, right? I just think he's going to get a good enough grade. NFL scouts have seen his upside. He'll test the draft. Where does Oklahoma look to replace the loss of Anthony Evans? And for me, I look in your state, man. You got Micah Tease. Now, am I saying he's the name to know? Not necessarily. I'm just saying from an outside perspective looking in, it at least makes sense to me. Now, you being the Oklahoma fan, what does that do for you when I say a guy like Micah Tease?
I mean, obviously, it gets everybody's juices flowing, right? Everybody gets excited about the name and the possibility of him wanting to flip. I believe he originally wanted to come here before, committing to Arkansas, but I think it's just a difference in opinion of how of where and how he should play at OU as far as being defensive, being a defensive back, because a lot of people see him as being a DB here more so as than a wide receiver. I think if you can get the kid, and that's great. I mean, he's a high-star recruit, and if he would be willing to flip, I think you give him a shot and kind of see what he's going to do. Because, I mean, to be quite frank with you, I think that's what Arkansas is most likely going to do. They're going to try him out at the slot, try him out at wide receiver, and just see kind of where he stacks up. And if they think that he is more of an athlete that could go and play defense, they're going to just switch him over. I mean, it's the same thing. So I think that's kind of your pitch to him. It's like, look, we'll give you a shot, but we still want to look at you on defense as well. So I'm not sure kind of what you do, but I mean, that would be a great pickup, a great addition to this class. But, my whole thing is this right here. Look, I don't necessarily know if Anthony Evans would have been a day one starter, or if he would have been heavy in the rotation. But just like I said before, and I told you this off screen, I want an instant day one production guy, like a guy that brings instant production and that star power to this offense. If we can get Micah Tease and it pans out, that's great. Obviously, that's a high star recruit in your state that you can go and get. He's a Tulsa guy, Tulsa kid. He's going to be able to come in and fit in, obviously, with this OU culture, but kind of yet to be seen. So, like I said, I would love to have him. Hell, I'd go back and get the Cole Adams, the kid is committed to y'all. I mean, you have, I know. You have some room. You have some room though. So it's just all about getting there.
No, we like Cole. Cole is home.
If you can't go and get a Micah Tease or whatnot, the portal is going to be open, and I think there's going to be a lot of really good names there, and maybe not names that we're accustomed to seeing, but.
Well, you have a Bunkley Shelton, right? I'm interested in him because I thought, and I was very vocal about this, I thought he would fit well in that Levy offense. Where that has gone, I haven't heard anything. But
I mean, I think it's kind of just the same thing. Just guys, it maybe it's not clicking so fast for them. I mean, you would have saw a lot of JJ Hester, I believe, this year, but he's been
speed demon. Yeah,
he's been a lot. He's been hurt a lot. So. I mean, you still got guys like him. You got Nick Anderson, got Jaden Gibson. I don't know what you're going to do with Trevon West. There's going to be some scholarships out there because you may Darby and Trevon West may be gone. I don't know. So
it's one of those situations where you don't question the talent, you question the experience and how fast it can come up to speed. Yeah. That's going to be interesting.
Because you're starting to see a lot of them on the field. I mean, that OSU game, Bunkley was out there an awful lot. I mean, they're running different packages with those wide receivers. And you see, like in Drake Stoops' role, Bunkley is running that a lot. You're seeing different guys come out there and run that position. So it hasn't just been, Farouk, Mims, and Stoops. It's been a number of guys, just they haven't gotten the number called.
I wonder if you're, again, for a lot of the Oklahoma fans, like, are you monitoring in a way that Texas A&M situation? Because a lot of those guys, especially with this, definitely just the horrific stuff that's going on over there, a lot of those guys could potentially enter that portal that were huge targets, especially because they're from the state of Texas. So I'm actually kind of curious to see, is that kind of monitored in a way, especially with the relationship, especially the skill position that's just not been the best connection from the receiving coach, from Jimbo Fisher himself, and just from a player-on-player relationship, it's been horrible. So I kind of wonder, do you kind of monitor that? Because there are some guys, some talented guys that have that number one potential.
Well, I think that,
and if I may, real quick,
ahead.
I just want to address a comment real quick. Faith Thomas asks, "Can I come on the show to talk?" Faith, follow me on Twitter. We'll get you scheduled to come on the show and talk sometime. But follow me on Twitter. That's where we can coordinate that much better. And go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to jump back in here and say, hey, look, I think that you do. I mean, two guys that come to mind right now. Obviously, Evan Stewart. I think a lot of people would be after him if he hits the market, right? But Moose Muhammad as well. I like Moose Muhammad an awful lot.
Now, here's an interesting thing, guys, and this is something that I am going to be making a video on. If Moose Muhammad hits the portal, you know a destination you have to put in contention instantly? Alabama. And I know, but let me explain. His father's Muhsin Muhammad. That's the famous Nick Saban speech of, "What do you want me to do?" Muhsin Muhammad, a player I had at Michigan State. Everybody wanted me to kick him off the team. I didn't. He went on to play 12 years in the NFL. All of his children got. That's his father. Yeah. He played for his father at Michigan State. If he enters the portal, we would be remiss not to go after him heavily. He is very, very talented, Chris. I completely agree. He is a very gifted wide receiver.
Those two pop off your head. I mean, I think a lot of people are monitoring that Texas A&M situation, and a lot of people. I would say this right here: you got Houston, who's going to be looking at that. You got Texas Tech for sure, who's going to live off the transfer portal these next couple of years. Maybe throw TCU in the mix of just a tad bit, but a lot of those Texas teams, SMU, it's going to be a lot of places where those people who are going to keep eyes on those kids. But when you're looking like at an Evan Stewart, you're looking at a guy like Moose Muhammad. Hell, to be honest with you, me and my uncle, we go back and forth on this. I like A-Chain a lot. I would love to see A-Chain, in a different position. Yeah, man. He's pretty good. As a stat,
and me, I said before the season and now that offense, wherever A-Chain and Anaya Smith would take them, that's where they're off. Those two, A-Chain and Anaya Smith, I think they're some of the most gifted college football players. And guys, I think A-Chain is criminally underrated and underappreciated. And on the national scale, he carries that offense. It's something to behold. Great point about it.
He's going to be a much, much better NFL back than what he is going to be in college.
Gracious.
Especially if the right team can get him and use him.
But Jance, I mean, to your point, though, I would say you're monitoring a lot of situations. You're not necessarily trying to poach like some people like out west like to do, but I would say for sure you're monitoring certain situations.
The petty never ends. The petty never ends. Now, guys, there's a lot of recruiting we could talk about, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if during the course of the show more recruiting news happens because it's that time of the year. And before we move on, I do have one more point on recruiting that I'm very interested in hearing from both of you and everybody watching, so get ready on this. Steve Wiltfong tweeted something the other day that I found really, really interesting, right? He was saying that if you're an uncommitted high school prospect, you may need to make your decision by December 4th, as opposed to when early signing day is, which I believe is December 21st through December 23rd. Don't quote me on that, but off the top of my head, I think that's when early signing day is. Steve Wiltfong was saying if you're an uncommitted high school prospect, December 4th may be the time you need, because when December 5th opens up, your institution that you're looking at, they could fill your spot with the transfer portal. What are y'all thinking about that? How are these coaches going to navigate? Because this is the first year we have these windows in the transfer portal, and this one coincides with early signing day. What are y'all thinking about that?
It's interesting. It's definitely interesting because in a way, I mean, really you can make an argument the last 3 years. It's kind of been closing the February period because, for the most part, before early signing day and all that stuff happened, it was just February. We would get ready for February and that was it. But now it's, it kind of makes sense in a way because when you look at all these teams, there's so much talent from these institutions, man, that were previously held the 4 and 5 star title that, again, as soon as they enter that portal, a lot of these other teams, they want them. They want it because they feel like their institution, they feel like their program, the coaching staff can develop them. And some of them, like I said, some of them can work. I mean, LSU, I mean, their team is full of transfers, and it's taken them to the SEC championship game. And some of them won't work, like Miami, where yes, you have some great players like like Phillips and some of those guys that will end up being first round picks. But at the end of the day, Miami they're in the position that they're in right now because they prioritize the portal over recruiting. So it is what it is. It's 50-50, but yeah, I mean, that in a way kind of puts the pressure on kids. And I think if you want to kind of make kind of an argument that this is awful for the high school for high school recruitment, is that it kind of rushes a kid's decision because they may not be ready. I mean, they may be ready for February. They kind of want to take their time, do the official visits, again, talk to their parents, talk to their team, and see if try to work everything out. And if they can't come to that decision this December, they want to try to do that for February. So they want to take all the time that they want. And for that to happen, if a recruit was, let's say, considering Alabama or maybe Oklahoma, and now again that decision is kind of rushed in a way, and that kid is probably not sure where he wants to go. Maybe he decides to kind of rush the decision, maybe picks Oklahoma or something, and he finds out that was ultimately the wrong choice. And it ultimately kind of goes back to that decision because he didn't really take his time with the recruiting process. And again, a lot of these kids, they got a lot going on, right? You got school going on, you got coaches calling you left and right. You got, a bunch of people just trying to talk to you, like news media, always trying to get to you. So again, some people, like I said, they're exactly sure for months exactly where they want to kind of go, but just kind of want to enjoy the recruiting process. Others want to take their time and they want to wait until the last minute. So I think in a way it rushes the process. I think, there's some goodness and there's some bad into it, but I mean, we're going in this direction. I mean, either way, ever since the introduction of the portal and the fact that we kind of saw it work, we kind of can see that this was going in a general direction. I mean, teams programs have lived off the portal and teams programs have died by the portal. So we'll see. I mean, overall, we'll see what happens.
Portal is going to be such an interesting case study. Chris, same question, man. What are you thinking? Because it's so close. That's the part that's just really intriguing to me.
No, I would say this right here. This has been a conversation I've had a couple of times.
You've pointed this out to me several times.
Well, I was going to say this right here. Look, it's just the era that we live in. And if anybody in the chat, anybody on this panel believes does not believe that there are backdoor deals, backhanded deals going on already, where a lot of these kids already know their destination and where they're going to potentially transfer to, I think that has then you're mistaken. You're obviously mistaken. You're not paying attention to the tea leaves at all, because I think there are some deals that are going to force some kids' hands, because some people are going to be able to walk in there and say, hey, look, if you don't come here, that's fine. I already got a guy that I want to play the position that you want to play. I want to build you. I want to mold you. I want to do all of that, but I already got a guy. So what are you going to do? You can play alongside of him. You can play behind him, and we can get you up to speed. What do you want to do? So I think that's a real conversation that you're going to see some people have, and it's not going to go so well. I mean, I'm waiting for it to hit the headlines where a recruit basically comes out and says, hey, he's already telling me that he has a guy over me. He has a guy there. He wouldn't say the name, but he already has a guy. And if I didn't come or whatever, then it is what it is. And this was pretty much like my end all be all. Coaches are already going and having sit downs with these kids and their parents and just tell them, hey, look, this is university of such and such. What do you want to do? We want you. We can use you. Obviously, you know that because your coach loves to tell kids, hey, we're either going to do it. We're either going to win with you or going to win
without you. Yep.
Exactly. So I think those conversations are being had, and I think these backdoor deals and all the rest of the stuff. I mean, think about it like this right here. Justin Fields is a perfect example, I believe, because Justin Fields had a lot leaving Georgia. There was a lot of talk as far as just kind of like backdoor. A lot of people in his camp, a lot of people out there, and hopefully I'm not misquoting anybody, but just a lot of people out there in his camp and everywhere else, basically putting out feelers to a lot of places. OU was one of them. Ohio State was the other one. Obviously, he kind of had an idea of where he was going. Obviously, he kept it kept that, tight lip. He stayed tight-lipped about it, but at the same time, I think that's a perfect scenario. It's just the fact that we didn't have this one-time transfer rule. We had the exception to the transfer rule, which he was able to apply for and successfully get, right? So the whole thing is that I think a lot of that stuff is happening. I think it's definitely going to force a lot of these kids' heads to kind of make a decision to get on boat early. That way they're not being recruited over in a portal, and they have a better chance of playing freshman year.
Completely agree. Now, we're going to transition from recruiting because, like I said, I think it's a pretty high likelihood. I don't have any inside information. Just judging by how this week has gone, it's a holiday. I think if you followed recruiting long enough, holidays usually pop off in terms of commitments. We could have a commitment live on stream, but we need to talk about the games this weekend, and that's Oklahoma versus Tech. Now, Jansen and I think we'll quickly go through this, and then, Chris, I'll give you the floor. That way, you being the Oklahoma fan, I want you to have the longest time to kind of go with your thoughts. Jans, I'll start it off. When I look at this game, really simply put, I think the X factor for Oklahoma is turnovers. Look, as we can talk about what Texas Tech has been this year, but right now, for every 3 touchdowns they're throwing 2 interceptions. That's not a recipe for lasting success, especially going up against a team like Oklahoma that, look, what do you want to talk about the defense? We can have a conversation about their growing. We can talk about where they are relative to where people expected them to be. But the one thing we can say, they're generating turnovers. Yeah. And they're actually that secondary. And guys, that Billy Bowman interception last week, that's NFL range. I said it on Monday. I'm going to say it again today. That was an NFL play. That was a Sunday play. Book it. That was film. Trojan, I mean, y'all's defense is, I don't know if I was a USC fan, I'd be talking about defense after the past decade y'all have had. I mean, I think Bishop Sycamore could have scored 50 last year on USC. I don't know, man. Y'all are great offensively this year, but defense is still a lot to be desired. Though against UCLA, I will give you credit, Trojan. I'll give y'all credit. Your defense was clutch against UCLA. Hats off to them. Respect where it's due, no doubt about that. I'm very excited for the Notre Dame talk. We're going to be talking about that in a bit. But that's pretty much all it to me. Can Oklahoma's offense play with 4 quarters of consistency? And what are they going to do? Jance, on to you.
Oklahoma's got to win this game, especially coming off of last week. That's a huge one against your rival. Oklahoma came out guns blazing, and then they started to slow down their production in the second half, of course, but that was a huge one overall for their program. I think every win at this point, that's just huge. That's a huge boost for their morale going forward. Obviously, this is kind of more of a trust the process type of thing that, some Oklahoma fans have been patient. Some Oklahoma fans want Brent Venables gone right off the gate because Oklahoma hasn't been in this position in a very, very long time. I mean, at least would be for me growing up. I haven't, I think the last time was probably like 8-5 record with Sam Bradford. That was like the last time I think we've seen Oklahoma in this sort of position. But no, not a lot of fans are not used to this. So, this is kind of more of the trust the process. But this game would be a huge bump to the morale if you can get this dub. Go on, get to a bowl game, close it out. Hopefully you can get the win there, close it out with that 8-5 record. Go on to the next season, and that's when you can really start to get recruiting into the standpoint. Because from what we've been hearing from a lot of these recruits, and again, shout to PG. PG's talked to a lot of these guys, and from what they've been saying, like they don't care about the records. They don't care about what's going on lately. They trust the process. They trust in Brent Venables. They trust in his coaching staff. And, Oklahoma has a hell of a class right now. So now we get to see kind of the first installments of everything, right? The first year, we kind of see during a full offseason with Brent Venables, what is he going to do about this coaching staff? Is he going to make the sort of adjustments? What is he going to do with the full year of recruiting staff? And how is he going to develop some of those players from year one? That's good. That's something that, again, we could talk about that during the offseason, of course, but focusing on this moment, they need this win. This will be a huge bump for morale moving forward, and just bring overall confidence. And just overall, this it will rise the stock in a lot of those players that are maybe trying to chase off, go to the NFL. It would be a huge bump for them if they can close it out with these last couple wins. Again, not the best season for Oklahoma, of course, but just overall, just a huge bump of morale. Close it out, get the win, get the bowl game. See what you guys can do there, but no, overall wise, I do think that this if Oklahoma can get the dub, this would be huge. Texas Tech kind of wins. it's kind of like, I mean, because Texas Tech, I mean, let's be honest, they're going to be in this position next year, right? They're kind of more of a 500. It's kind of depending, but they're more of a 500 team. For Oklahoma fans, for Sooner fans, the expectation is to compete for Big 12 titles, compete for the playoff and national championship. So that's why this one I think would be much bigger for Oklahoma to try to get.
Chris, before you, Trojan, you're 100% right, and that's why I say y'all have been impressive. But at the end of the day, if there's not a championship at the end of it, then we're all in the same boat, my man. We're all in the same boat. Ain't no moral victories over here.
Listen, USC, man, I ain't gonna lie, their schedule's been kind of a little easy, man. No, Oregon, but Washington.
Here's what I'll say, man. Here's what I'll say. USC was a terrible team last year. And this year, they're much improved. We can argue who they've played. I'm going to give credit where it's due. They're a much better team than I thought they'd be. And against UCLA, they had a really clutch. I'm not going to say solid defensive performance. Clutch. When the moment was the brightest, they showed up in a clutch play. Now, we can talk about DTR. It is what it is. But, I had Trojan. Yep. Hey, respect, man. Respect. Now, Chris, floor is yours.
Oh, no, I was just going to jump on here and I was going to say this right here. RIP the GOAT, Kobe Bryant. Always said, no championships, wasted season. Anyways, kind of going forward, though, about this Texas Tech game. Here's what I have to say about it. The X factor is definitely going to be our linebackers and that front seven. Why? Because Texas Tech, they do some really interesting things. We've heard it from Eichert and Lehman this week, but I've seen it. I've watched them play. They do some really interesting things in the running game, right? And then also they love the quarterback run. And they have, when Shuck is able to run the ball without being hurt, he can be a bit effective, but he can also sling that rock as well. So
is Shuck the quarterback for them this weekend?
I think he is going to be the quarterback for them this weekend. Everything I'm hearing, he should be. Yeah. So Shuck should be the quarterback for them, but don't be surprised if you see a lot of the Fields kid as well, and they're kind of giving you that West Virginia look as well with a lot of quarterback run and some quarterback blast type of actions, right? So you're going to have to account for everything and make sure that you're good. I think secondary-wise, with our DBs, our safeties, I think we're going to be just fine. I think that Deshaun White has finally turned that corner, so we should be good there with the cheetah position, but the secondary should be fine. But it's whenever we are in obvious pass downs, are we going to play a soft zone and not be able to cover guys or be able to match up with guys well while in that zone? Or are we going to be giving up 3rd and 15, 3rd and 12, different things like that? Can we actually get 3 and outs? They're not going to be scared to go for it on 4th down. They really don't have a lot to lose in this game. I believe this is a game where they can, they'll be bowl eligible, but this is a game right here that they want to put on tape to try to show recruits and all the rest of that. Hey, this is what we're doing. We're beating OU. We're trending in the right direction, all the rest of that. So it's a game that you really have to go down there and handle your business. Offensively, what it boils down to is that can you continue what you did in that first quarter against Oklahoma State? Can you not get stagnant, and can you actually run plays that make sense? I mean, I think that's kind of the thing that's kind of F with me a little bit. It's just Levy's playmakings at some points in the game just don't make sense. Not talking about the tempo or the speed of the game. It just doesn't make sense with some of the calls. Like we've seen that. I know you want to stay with that. He's going off of tendencies, kind of trying to hurt the defense, but they're able to counter and have a viable counter. We're not going to have Andrew Rain as our center. Kunjal's going to be our center. He struggled a little bit down the stretch against Oklahoma State. So it's a lot of things that need to work for this team, but it's just another game that we all can chalk up to just basically saying, hey, if OU can stay out of their own way, they should win this game and win it easily.
Yeah, and so here's some questions I have, man, because whenever I'm looking at this, how confident are you that there can be any sort of reprieve to Oklahoma's offensive struggles? And I think, look, if we're halfway through the season, we can talk about can it be fixed? We're at the end of the season. So fixed for this year, right? That's a sideline conversation, but progress is what I'm looking for. How confident are you that we can see some sort of progress? Because I've told you to, I haven't really talked much about it. I said it on Indy's podcast, JP's podcast the other night. I'm starting a deep dive into Oklahoma's offense. And right now, I have a hypothesis. Way too early to say because I'm 2 games in the deep dive. First down for y'all, man. And I know everybody's going to talk about third down, rightfully so, but first down, I'm charting so far through 2 games an alarming rate of if Oklahoma does not have a positive play on first down, it is not going to generate a turnover. They're not going to continue the drive. So how confident are you that we can see some evolution in the offense this week?
I'm confident. I'm not highly confident. I think my problem with the offense is the fact that when we get behind the 8 ball, when we get behind the chains and we're in 3rd and 7, between 3rd and 7, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 15, it's like we don't really have a money play or a cash play that's going to be able to help us pick up a lot of yards to make it 4th and short, or at least and make it make sense to go for it, right? We're always in either like a 4th and 3, 4th and 3 is good, but 4th and 6. But like I said, you're saying in that 3rd and 7 to 3rd and 12 area, and your quarterback hasn't been the most accurate this year. He hasn't been as accurate as he's been in his career. So it's just one of those things where that's really hindered us. I know I'm talking about third down, but it goes back to first down because when you're running your plays and you're getting behind the 8 ball, you're staying behind the chains, and you're not moving the chains. That's the problem. And then on second down, but like I told you guys, and like I said on my show plenty of times, one of my problems with this offense is just all the east and west plays that we run. There's some obvious holes, and there's some obvious. I mean, we run a lot of slants, different things like that. But my goodness, there's a lot of east and west plays. Some of the screens have actually been one of our best plays this year. But my goodness, some of the just the simple out routes or whatever, they're getting blown up, and then we're behind. Like I said, we're behind the chains again. So it's just some of the play calling that you feel like this offense is. I think that now towards the end of the season, it's in its beta stage because you've seen the highs and lows where it could be extremely productive, fast, quick, lightning scoring, all of those things. But you've also seen that it's still a lot of kinks that you got to work out. And that comes with getting a guy like Anthony Evans. That comes with getting a guy like Petaway. And that comes with mixing them in there with a guy like Mims, Farouk, Stoops. Hopefully Theo Weiss stays next year. But that's what comes with it, is that you add those pieces and you're able to make that offense explosive, right? Coming into the season, I think one name that I kept saying all the freaking time on your show, Ty, was Dontario Drummond. And I think that we found that with Farouk.
Yeah,
it was time for us to go out there and get those outside guys.
I love that actually.
They're blazing fast. You know, they got a lot of blazing speed, and they're able to actually open this defense up to allow a guy like that who could really be your Army Swiss knife, where he could play in the slot, he could play outside, he could do all of those different things. Let him be your guy. He can run the jet sweeps, all of those different things. That's why I say, like, his perfect comp is the Ontario Drummond, in my opinion, at this point in his career. But the offense just has to open up. Right now, I don't think that we have the personnel. We're not playing with our complete personnel that we could be using to be able to open up that offense. I think what we're doing now is just, hey, we're trying to win a game. And so I think that's why you're seeing it be so, I wouldn't necessarily say it's vanilla. Guys are still running wide open, but this year just hasn't clicked on all cylinders.
Yeah, it's going to be super interesting to watch y'all's game. I think that the Texas Tech OU game is definitely a game to watch, but we have some other Big 12 action we need to get into, and one of those games occurred today. Yeah. Texas Longhorns got a big win today to keep their hopes alive. And guys, I have a question for both of you. I have a question for the chat. Eric, he's had a great season, but Bijan Robinson to New York? I mean, do you think that he deserves a chance to go to New York?
Yeah.
I think yes. He's been unbelievable.
Yeah.
Chance, you say yes?
You got to put him in there. I mean, he is the biggest reason why Texas is in the, I mean, again, let's give credit to their defense. I mean, second half of the year, their defense has played absolutely phenomenal, but Bijan Robinson, for the most part, has been the offense. Again, I'll get Roschon Johnson. Killian Robinson had a pretty solid game, solid game today. Texas offensive line is showing improvement, but we all know Bijan Robinson. He's been that player since he's been that player pretty much ever since he stepped to campus. He's electrifying. He's extremely elusive, phenomenal footwork, phenomenal vision, extremely powerful. Does not go down after first contact. I mean, he is a guy that for the most part, his favorite player was Reggie Bush growing up. And he's more, not saying he's Reggie Bush. I think he's more of a slower version of him, but a more powerful version in a way. But no, Bijan Robinson, he's earned his way. I mean, he is clearly, in my opinion, the best running back in college. Blake Corum, we all know. Well, Blake Corum, I think even despite him, even if he doesn't really play in the game, in the Ohio State game, he's going to get invited to New York because of his record, because of his story, and because, playing with Michigan, you're 10-0 in this type of spotlight, he's going to get invited. But we all know Bijan Robinson is the best running back in college football. He absolutely deserves that invite. And if Texas honestly would have had a better record, let's say they would have been, 10-2 right now, and they would have clinched that Big 12 berth, I think he would have been invited. But we're gonna have to see what happens, man. But no, he should be invited. But again, there are other players that definitely should deserve to be there. But we all know for the most part, it's going to be most likely a quarterback award. Probably the only exception would probably be Blake Corum from Michigan, as far as the other skill players going to be invited.
So let me jump in here and I just want to add one more point, James, before you keep going. In my opinion, I think that he's definitely not Reggie Bush. I don't think that I think he has big play fat.
No, but he's similar. He's similar a little bit.
I think that he's more of a Saquon Barkley type back. I think that he's a guy that can make the spectacular play, but he can also he's more of a true running back. I think Reggie Bush was just
a gadget.
He was just a gadget type
ahead of his time.
I think that Bijan has always kind of been in my opinion, I think he may actually have a better career if he can if he doesn't take that many awkward hits or whatever like he has in college, and he's able to stay durable like he showed this year. I think that he can possibly have a better career than Saquon Barkley. But that's my comp. I think he's a guy with the big place, the big play ability. He can play any position. I mean, he could hurt you in the run game, probably hurt you on special teams as well. But he's just that kind of a player, in my opinion.
Yeah, and to answer Matt's question, Matt asked about Robinson's numbers and Eric Gray's numbers. And Matt, you're right. I know the underlying thing you're pointing out here. Eric Gray's had a phenomenal season. Eric Gray's rushed for 1,200 yards this season. He has been automatic. Bijan's got 1,400 yards, and he over the last few games,
he's about to
man,
get 1,500. The stats can update. He's about to get 1,500.
He has carried that Texas offense. I mean, guys, let's just talk about the past few games. And Quinn has struggled, right? And Chris and I were talking about this earlier. We will both push back on the notion of, oh, Quinn is a bust because he's so young. It's his first year starting. But I also think we now don't really know who Quinn is, as opposed to when he was playing in the early portions of this year, it was Quinn is the next big thing. Now, I don't know. I will argue against anybody saying he's a bust, but I think now, if we're being completely honest, we have to categorize him as more of a question than an automatic thing. Is that fair, Jance?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I always kind of look at like this. If Illinois would have won a couple more games and they would have beat Michigan, I think Chase Brown would have been in the conversation because he's carried that offense. He's the reason why they're in the position that they're in right now, and he's leading the country in rushing yards. So. But no, Bijan Robinson he's on a whole nother playing field. I mean, he's done everything for them. He's their best pass block. He's arguably one of the best pass blockers, just from more of a protection standpoint for Quinn. What he can do in the receiving game, what he can do in the running game. I mean, Bijan Robinson, I think after when the stats start to update for him, he's had almost over 100 touches in 3 games. I mean, that's just incredible.
It almost, I'm not going to compare it. I'm not comparing it. But, Jance, doesn't this feel eerily similar to that Derrick Henry? That last portion of the season, they just started loading him up with carries, and he was just like, I'm going to be the offense. Now, they're not giving the ball to Bijan that many times. Derrick might have 38. But it's this notion of, you know what? We're at the end of the season. Give me the ball. Let me get us to the promised land. Yeah.
And it was really that LSU game. That LSU game when we gave him 38 carries and he had over 200 rush yards. I mean, that was the Heisman game. That was
unbelievable
the game that really set him up to win it. Especially because he was going against Leonard Fournette on the other side. It sucks because again, I know that they're going to give it to Blake. I know if there's a running back that's going to go to New York, it's going to be Blake because of his story and because
that's
of
a great point, though.
Is undefeated.
Yeah.
But I would just say this: if Texas would have beaten Alabama, I think he goes because he was having a phenomenal game against Alabama, and again, Bama was hitting him in the backfield so many times, and he was bouncing off defenders. So he was bouncing off defenders. I mean, what he was able to do in that game was incredible. But if he needs a marquee win. That again, I don't like the Heisman Trophy award because it's very similar to MVP of the NFL. You need marquee wins for you to go to New York, or you need marquee performances against big time opponents. And again, it was either do it against Bama or TCU. Those were the games where I thought that was a kind of a missed opportunity. But because he didn't really get the carries against TCU, I think it's too late for him to go to New York now. He needs those marquee opponents in order for him to kind of at least go off of, and he didn't really do it until, of course, later in the year.
Yeah, Vincent, I don't know if you just came in, but you're essentially making the same point we are, and that Jan says is that because of the way the Heisman is currently structured, if we're talking probability, Blake Corum might have a higher probability of winning the Heisman just because when we look at how they value undefeated seasons, big games like that. But if we're saying who's the best running back in the nation, it's Bijan. It's Bijan. I'd take Bijan over Blake Corum. And no disrespect to Corum. Corum is a beast, a monster. I've said this about Bijan for a while. He's like trying to tackle smoke in a phone booth. He is entertainment, man. And Chris, I actually love the comparison you did to Saquon because I've actually thought that a lot when I watch Bijan. Is I'm like, man, this guy looks like a more powerful Saquon. And when maybe not lower body, but I mean, he is perfectly excited to run straight through you. And that catch he had a few weeks ago. But Chris, I did want to get your take on this. And it was that Quinn Ewers thing I posed where I don't think we can classify him as an automatic guy like so many thought in the early portions, but I will argue against anybody saying he's a bust. That's fair.
Now, I think that's fair. Now, the Texas faithful, a good portion of the Texas faithful, I won't say all of them, a good portion of them are going to say, oh, well, he's been injured this year. We saw him against Alabama. He was lights out. None of you guys did that, yada, yada, yada. We're going to see that. Well, next year, with Bijan leaving, Roshan leaving, having to work in those new backs. Look, we can talk about them being great as well with Brooks, and then the back.
I really like Brooks.
Yeah, we could talk about that, but at the same time, are they Bijan though? You know, and then wink, wink. You know, word on the street about Worthy. If that's true, then you're left with Nayor.
I mean, look at the timing.
Yeah. You're looking with the exactly. You're looking with the question mark that is Nayor. Is Nayor going to be the same guy coming off the ACL?
I hope, man. So disappointed about that.
And then also, I mean, you're kind of thinking, are these Texans in the same boat as saying, oh, well, Jonte Cook is going to come in and he's going to be lights out. Another talented kid that they're going to talk about, right? And they still got some guys over there that are high star guys that could fill in. Ajay Hall, he's a question mark. We don't know. Is he going to be a Ajay Hall that plays, or is he going to be another Billingsby? You know, but the whole thing is Texas will be talented. They've always been talented. We'll see that. Okay. But to Quinn Ewers, here's the thing. Is he going to be able to take his game to the next level and become a Bryce type of quarterback? And I'm not talking about Bryce's play on the field. I'm talking about Bryce's level of intelligence right here with the playbook, being able to call those plays and do things. Obviously, Stark is going to have his hands all over the offense, the scripts, different things like that. But is Quinn going to be able to take his game to the next level? I mean, obviously, his arm talent is pretty damn good. We know that. But is it going to take him? But I guess where the maturation process has to happen for me to call him that guy is for him not to lean so heavy on Sark and be able to make those plays, make the correct reads, go through those different things the right way. You know, you're seeing Caleb Williams, for better, for worse, with Lincoln. It's been decent at times. It's been great a lot of times. Okay, so him going through his progressions, he's still struggling with some of the same reads that he saw at OU, but he's actually gotten better. And you see, he's
Oh
still
yeah, in that last game. And Chris, I'm gonna give you some flowers when we
yeah,
get to the USC Notre Dame portion because I wanna talk about that UCLA game, especially Caleb.
yeah.
He was sensational,
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. You saw
unbelievable.
him still struggle with some of the same looks. That's where his interceptions came from. But at the same time, I think that's what we're basically saying about Quinn Ewers. Caleb Williams is able to overcome some of those
Oh,
things because of
easy.
talent
Yeah,
alone. With Quinn Ewers, we haven't really seen that yet.
and
And so,
no,
go
I was
ahead, go
saying
ahead.
Wake. That's why Texas fans believe in Arch Manning because of the Manning background and of
The
course
cerebral.
their intelligence of how they are able to dissect the game and from
Yeah,
the clips that we've seen of Arch really just dissecting NFL playbooks and how we can pretty much just remember it in pretty much one sitting. I mean that's why a lot of fans are confident for next year. That's why I think the pressure is gonna be heavily on Quinn Ewers because now you have a quarterback that can not only understand this off that can not only have the ability to understand this sort of offense, but has the talent to match what Quinn was able to do, or what a lot of Texas fans believe that he has the ability to do.
so you can go back. I promise you, you can go back to Steven's channel. Shout out to Fanatic Perspective. Go to Steven's show and you will see on one of the episodes that I was on, I said, hey, what if Quinn Ewers struggles this year mighty heavily? Or what if Quinn Ewers has some struggles this year? That's going to be a lot of pressure coming into the season as the quarterback, the starting quarterback. But there's a quiet portion of your fan base that would love to see Malik, right? And then there's a huge portion of your fan base that's saying, hey, let the best man win. Throw the football out there and see if Ewers is that guy or see if Manning is the guy who needs to be at the helm. So you're coming into this season, and like I said, that's going to be a huge distraction because a lot of people are going to be waiting for Quinn Ewers to mess up and say, well, maybe we should go with Manning. Look, OU's going to have the same problem next year. I keep saying
Yeah,
it.
very true. Very true.
Everybody is not listening to me. I'm like, hey, we're going to have a Clemson 3.0 situation. Not the DJU and K Klubnik, or you can have a Kelly Bryant, Trevor Lawrence situation. Anytime that DG comes out there and plays, and like he has in some of these games this year, you're going to hear Jackson Arnold's name. But back to Texas, that's exactly what's going to happen in some portions next year, especially if their season trends the same way that it did this year, and let's say that they're 5-2, 5-3. A lot of people are going to be saying, hey, maybe it's time because maybe he's just not that guy.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. And before we move on to TCU's game, I do want to get to some of the comments in here. Matt asked earlier about Xavier Worthy and then asked about another true freshman. And yeah, they have some guys, Matt, in the wide receiver room. If Nayor is able to go, I really like his ability. It's a question mark, and I will remain that it's not for sure, but it's a question mark. Really like his upside. I think Jonte Cook is going to translate. And the reason I think that is because he's a route guy, right? Like usually when you have the releases he has at the line of scrimmage and the routes, those guys will translate at some level. But you would really like to keep him. And Vincent, in fairness, being a Texas fan in here, actually voiced that he could see Xavier Worthy making that move to USC, which is actually very interesting. And yes, Matt, we actually did go through the Anthony Evans. We started with that, but at the end of the show, given time, we might go to do more recruiting stuff. Oh, PG, we have not even really gotten started, man. We're still in the Big 12. Right now, we're going to TCU, Iowa State. Guys, what are we thinking about this one? Look, at this point, I think it's divine intervention. TCU is going to go through the Big 12. I just think that there's a way you win. Is it conducive to giving you faith that TCU can beat Georgia? No, but they can win dogfights. And I have faith in TCU being able to beat Iowa State in a dogfight because Iowa State doesn't have any offense to be found. What are y'all thinking? Chris, I'll start with you.
Man, I'll be honest with you, Ty. Iowa State.
I feel you. I mean, it's a great defense. That
I-
Campbell 3-3-5 and the defensive coordinator that helped architect it, or really architect it, and then Campbell kind of put a little bit of a great defense, no doubt.
So here's my thing. If Lincoln Riley's little brother, what is his name? Isn't it Garrett Riley?
Garrett
Riley.
Garrett Riley is running the same system as his brother with some of his own little wrinkles and sprinkles on there, right? I like that, wrinkles and sprinkles. Go War Eagle. If he is running the same system, what defense is giving him some? What defense is giving Lincoln Riley some of the most problems? It's Matt Campbell's 3-3-5. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say problems per se, but it's definitely been one of those defenses that's made him actually work the field and have to actually be methodical about his approach to the game. Get what I'm saying? Because obviously, Lincoln Riley's offense is predicated on the pass game. So the whole thing is that I think Iowa State could go in here, and if Iowa State can control the time of possession and they can get a pulse, I'm not saying they have to have a great day, but they have to have a pulse in the running game. They have to be able to run the ball. They haven't really been able to run the ball all that well this year, and it's kind of showed. So if they can get help from the running game and Decker can make some plays, I don't see why they couldn't go in there and do what a lot of people would consider to be the impossible. I think that I said it before and I'll say it again. I think that at some point in the season, whether it's this game or the Big 12 championship game, I think the real Max Duggan stands up. I think he shows himself, and I think that it will be interesting. They played close with a lot of teams that you had thought that they would have blew out. West Virginia, obviously Baylor last week. They're barely escaping with these wins. Just some key stops that you need to get. And I think Iowa State defensively, they can make it tough for TCU to move the ball. The question is can they get a healthy running game, and can Hunter Decker be that guy tomorrow to make those plays? And I think it's going to be a really, really close game. And I'm gonna go with Iowa State.
Jazz, what are you thinking?
I hope Iowa State can win this game. It will help Alabama's case, but I think I'm gonna go with TCU. I would not be surprised if Iowa State wins this game, especially because maybe TCU, maybe they're eyeing their ball on the Big 12 title game. Maybe they're kind of ignoring this opponent a little bit. They played in a lot of close games, and Max Duggan, he's not had a really good November, compared to what he was able to do September and early October. Like mid-October to the November period, we're really kind of starting to see the old Max Duggan a little bit, starting to miss some wide open reads, not going through his progressions, making some almost costly mistakes. And then their defense, even though their defense, there's games where they definitely stepped up and played. They have looked vulnerable at times. TCU, we see it every year, man. It's just that one team where the committee does not want them in. They don't want them in, but for somehow in some way, they are finding ways to win games, and they're proving the committee wrong. And ultimately, they have no choice but to put them in. We see it every single year with the college football playoff. TCU, they're just a team, man, that just find ways to win. They know how to win dirty. They can, again, they were starting to really dominate earlier on, but they're more of a team that they play 4 quarters of football, man, and they're not really going to dominate in all fashions of the game. But you can't make costly mistakes. You can't make costly turnovers against them, because if you give TCU a chance, they're going to come right back and they're going to bite you right in the ass. So the question is, can Iowa State? They have to play their best game. They have to play a clean, perfect game. Now, the thing I like about Iowa State is the fact that they are a well-coached football team. I think the problem with Iowa State this year is the talent. I think talent-wise, compared to maybe some of those old Iowa State teams with Breece Hall in it, much better teams. They don't really have the same talent level, and this is kind of why a lot of people were saying Matt Campbell needs to really leave Iowa State, because when he's in a situation that he is right now, even though he's a really, really good football coach, at the end of the day, talent does matter. If you don't win the transfer portal, then you're going to take some dips. You're definitely going to take some dips, when it comes to his record. So they're definitely more than capable of doing it. Iowa State had games where they should have won. They definitely should have won that Texas game. If it wasn't for that one Xavier Hutchinson drop. But for the most part, I think TCU guts this out. I think it's going to be a close game. I think Iowa State and TCU. I think this is going to game that's going to come down to the fourth quarter. TCU has more experience when it comes to closing games out, while Iowa State has kind of been a team that struggled a lot in the fourth quarter because they have not been bad in the first, second, and the third quarter. It's just the fourth quarter. I mean, it's just that's where they kind of start to kind of fall apart. TCU, I think TCU will once again rise to the occasion, and I think they'll win this game close and they'll play in Arlington.
Yeah, I just first off, I think Denzel would have my head if I picked against TCU this weekend, and I'm going to be seeing him tomorrow, so I can't do that. Second, like I said, do I think TCU is going to win a national championship? No, because of the reasons both of you have highlighted, right? And it's some of the things I've talked about. A win is a win. And at the end of the day, winning in college football is the most important metric, right? It is. But how you win also matters as well. And we've talked about this before. I'm going to give you two different scenarios. Let's say Hayes State beats Georgia by 21 points. Okay? That's a solid win. And I mean this Georgia. As opposed to Hayes State beats ULM by 2 points in a struggle win. Both are wins. One of those wins is substantially better than the other. So do I think TCU can win a national championship? No, but I do think there is something to whenever you struggle the way they have, you just learn how to win. No matter how ugly it may be, you learn how to win. And this is one thing I will say about TCU. I don't know how many people in the chat. I'd be interested, guys, if you saw this last week, please hop down in the comments, let me know. And actually, Matt, yeah, great point here. Great point. Just like OU last season. And this was kind of the point where some OU fans got at me last season because they were like, well, Oklahoma's winning. And I'm like, yes. And at the end of the day, that's the most important metric. But do I think they can win a national championship playing like that? No, they're going to have to get better. But I think that's a great one. But the thing I want to know, did y'all see Max Duggan's interview after that game where he went and talked to Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, right? All those guys? He's infectious. I instantly got why the team responds to him the way they do. The guy is infectious. I would run through a brick wall for him. And because of that, I genuinely am going to be rooting for the Frogs this weekend, seeing what they can do. But Chris, to your point, we know what that defense is, and we know the problems it gets people. Let's move on. We have a real big game out west that we have to talk about. USC versus Notre Dame. And guys, this has legitimate playoff implications. The other day, I was lucky enough to do a show with Chris Plank, and we were talking, and Plank was saying that he thinks USC is one of the few teams that could control its own destiny. Ohio State and Michigan, one of those teams are going to have a loss, right? It's just the nature of the game. One of them will not be a Big Ten champion. If USC wins out, it's going to be hard to not put them in the playoffs. Jance, I want to start with you. I'll go last on this one. USC, Notre Dame, Lincoln Riley versus Marcus Freeman. What are you thinking, man?
I'll say this first before we get into it. I don't think USC controls its own destiny yet, because from what we've learned about the playoff committee and from what we've seen, it's all about the eye test. Now, granted, USC's only loss was to Utah in a 2-point conversion, but when you take a look at some of their wins, some of their best wins, it's always been close games, right? The Oregon State game was extremely close. They beat UCLA by 3 points, and then when you look at their strength of schedule compared to some of the other Pac-12 teams, kind of one of the weakest there. So it's a great opportunity because you're playing against a really good Notre Dame team, and then most likely you're playing against, well, it really depends, because if Oregon loses to Oregon State, then Washington jumps to number 2, and you play Washington, even though I think both teams will give USC a hell of a game in that title game. But going to this game, Notre Dame, this is just one of those games where, even though I think USC is more talented, Notre Dame, this is going to be a very similar game to Oregon State USC in my opinion. Oregon State USC in my opinion. This matchup is not good for USC. Notre Dame is much more physical. This is definitely going to be the most physical team they play against all year. That's if they can hop into the playoffs. But Notre Dame, as far as their front on both sides of the ball, are great. Their defensive line, led by Isaiah Fauski, who's going to be a first-round pick, is a beast. They got a couple guys there. They're going to be NFL draft picks, including Isaiah Fowlsky. Their secondary, led by Brandon Joseph, they're absolute hitters. And I give credit to Coach Williams. I mean, ever since those embarrassing losses to Tulane and to Marshall, they've stepped it up. They have gotten it together. And Drew Pine, I can't believe I'm even saying this, but Drew Pine he's balled out. I mean, he's been pretty efficient for the most part. They found a rhythm at the receiving game, and it's not just Michael Mayer, right? They got other guys on the outside that are now starting to make up and starting to make some plays. We all know Notre Dame has a running game that's their core to why they've been so successful. But the difference is from UCLA last week is that we all know UCLA did not have a good defense. UCLA lost a lot of production from their defense last year, which I'm actually kind of impressed UCLA is actually in a position. Well, no, maybe we shouldn't be, because we all knew that Dorian Thomas and Robinson with Chip Kelly, we all knew that this offense was going to be good. We just didn't think that UCLA was going to have the record that they were going to have. But this is going to be the best defense they play against all year, with the exception of Oregon State. And even Oregon State doesn't really have that much talent compared to what Notre Dame's able to have. So talent level is going to be evenly close. The matchup, I think, is the biggest problem for USC, is the fact that they now have this is the best defensive line they're going to have to go against probably all year round, all season long, until maybe if they can get past this, they can make it to the playoffs. But I don't like the matchup here. I think Notre Dame wins this game because of what they can do, because of their ability of how they can get to the trenches, of how they can get to the quarterback. Give me Notre Dame to win this game close, not high scoring. Let's say 27-24.
27-24. Chris, what are you thinking, man?
I think this is a game where if Notre Dame can control, let's just say it for what it's worth, if they can control Caleb Williams, then they should win this game. I agree with everything that Jen says. I think Notre Dame can come in here and play a physical brand of football with them defensively and offensively, but I also believe that Marcus Freeman is going to have something really, really, really nice planned for Lincoln Riley. I think that he's going to try his best to see through some of the gimmick plays and some of the gimmick routes that they try to run. For example, the dagger, the drag route that turns into basically a dagger. So I think that you're going to see him kind of, not get baited for a lot of those things. I think what you're trying to do basically is I don't know if Notre Dame necessarily has all the team speed, but I think that as far as their concepts and what they want to do defensively, I think that's where they'll make their money. I don't think that they should get into a battle of trying to go man-to-man per se every play with a Jordan Addison or even a Mario Williams, guys like that. I think that what you have to do, you're contained, wherever your contain is coming from, it's going to have to be really effective to make sure that Caleb Williams is reading defenses instead of trying to take off for 6, 7, 40 yards on a run, And so I think that's the interesting part. I think another thing that kind of plays into it as well is that, it's at USC. So weather is going to be pretty beautiful out there, and you're going to get their best shot. They're going to get your best shot. So I think that what you do, defensively, you just have to control that. Offensively, though, that's the part where I'm like, can we actually see this? This offense has had life over these past few weeks. We've seen how they looked against Clemson, against that defense, and what they were doing. USC can kind of be a little bit of a different beast. Okay, so obviously, as much as we don't like them right now, Lincoln Riley is still one of the best offensive minds, if not the best offensive mind in the nation. So definitely think that we can say that their offense is way better than what we've seen from Clemson this year, even though Clemson is right there with them neck and neck trying to aim for that 4th spot, right? But I really believe that if you can do that, if you can run a really good contain, even put a spy out there from time to time on Caleb Williams and keep him in that pocket and make him go through his progressions and have to work the field, I think that that's where you will win the game. And I think that you can, and obviously, like I said, Marcus Freeman he knows what he's doing out there. He's really turned this team around. Like I always tell you, Ty, hey, we're talking about OU an awful lot, but nobody's talking about Miami. Nobody's
true.
About,
and what did I tell you, Chris, about 2 weeks ago? What is it? The exact DM I sent to you was Nobody is happier OU is struggling than Mario Cristobal in Miami, because somehow nobody's talking about that.
Napier in Florida. That is kind of been a wreck. I'll be honest with you guys. They turned their season. They've turned their season around. They got y'all, but it still feels like LSU is in the SEC championship game by default.
I think they should be, regardless. I know there's a path for us, but I think they've earned it.
Yeah, no, and I'm saying they've earned it, but I'll just say it still feels like they're there by default. Right? So, with that being said, like I said, look, I got Notre Dame in this game, and I'm sticking to it. I don't think they're going to go in there and win by 17 like PG said in the comments, but I definitely think they'll probably sneak out of there with I'll give them 6 points. How about that? I'll say it'll be a 27-21 game.
Yeah, and guys, this is what scares me, right? Notre Dame's offense is not there. If we look at their passing attack, they come in as the number 113 passing attack in the nation. USC can't really stop the pass with any consistency unless they're generating interceptions, what they've done at a high clip. USC is the number 105 passing defense. Now, Notre Dame does rush the ball a bit better. They have the number 36 rushing offense to USC's number 68 rush defense. But overall, Notre Dame has the number 75 total offense in the nation. Defensively, they have the number 17 total defense. Against the rush, they're number 44. Against the pass, they're number 16. The reason why this matchup is so good, so tough to call, we're talking about best on best, guys. What does USC do best? It's their passing attack. The number 4 passing attack in the nation, going up against the number 16 passing defense in the nation. Chris, you made an interesting point, and I completely agree with you. I've seen people say, hey, they need to get to Caleb Williams. They need to, get their guys and try and get him sacked. You can do that. I mean, I'm always of the mindset of go get the quarterback. I love defensive football, so I love defensive aggression. But Caleb is an interesting cat, y'all. I say that because Caleb is one of the few quarterbacks like Bryce Young. Bryce is a different beast altogether because I don't know that you want to keep Bryce in the pocket either. But if I'm a defense, I'm much more comfortable keeping Caleb in the pocket than having him run around. And the reason is simple. There's not a throw he can't make on the run that he can't make in the pocket. Genuinely. He can make every single throw he does in the pocket and a clean pocket on the run. There is no drop off in his ability to throw the football on the run. That complicates things, especially, and we saw this against UCLA. Caleb gets out the pocket. He's going. A linebacker comes up. He's popping it right over their head. A safety comes up. He's rocketing the ball 40. He's got a live arm, ladies and gentlemen, a very live arm. Now, PG makes an interesting point up in the comments saying Notre Dame should run a too high safety look. And I think that's probably what we will see because of the injury to Travis Dye. Guys, if Travis Dye was healthy, I would be picking USC right now. I'm going to be very honest with you because I don't know if Notre Dame is going to be able to contend with this offense and contain them for 4 quarters. We can talk about the lack of physicality, true, but how many times did we see when Lincoln Riley was at Oklahoma, maybe y'all played a Texas team that had y'all beaten some physical aspects, but because y'all schemed, you were able to get it going. Now, that being said, we never saw a Texas defensive coordinator scheme up the way Marcus Freeman schemes up, right? Like, all due respect to Marcus Freeman, Jance, you probably know about this. How many institutions have been trying to lift him out of Notre Dame now for years?
A lot.
Guys, behind the scenes, I'm going to let y'all know something. Behind the scenes, for about the last 6-7 years, there has been a mission to get that man. They have really about the past 3 years, I'd say, right? 6 to 7 is boosting, but about the past 3, he's a brilliant defensive coordinator. I think there's a path for each team to have victory in this game. You have to ask yourselves these questions. Is Notre Dame going to be able to consistently take advantage of the opportunities and move the ball? And are they going to be able to consistently keep Caleb out the end zone? If the answer to those is yes, they're going to win. I don't know if the answer to that is going to be yes. And one thing I'm really interested to see, we're going to find out a lot more about Austin Jones, the transfer running back that USC has, very talented running back, really like his game, and Raleek Brown. This game right here, y'all. I don't know that this game is getting the play it is, and I think it's much closer than a lot of people are thinking. I think it's so close. I have a real tough time deciding who I think is going to win this game. So much though that while that I'm talking, and even all today, I've talked myself into saying USC is going to win, and then I've talked myself into saying Notre Dame is going to win because I do see a path.
It's all about it. It's for me. If Notre Dame has to win this game, Drew Pine, for the most part, he's a game managing quarterback. We all know he's not an elite guy, but for what we've seen before in some of the big games, at least later on the stretches, they haven't been in a position where he needed to be that guy. I mean, if you go back and watch the Clemson game, there's not a better front in college football, in my opinion, than Clemson. Just purely off of the talent and the amount of players. I mean, all four, really five of them, if you include KJ Henry, are going to go off to the NFL, right? Right, with Murphy, Bresee, Xavier Thomas, a lot of those guys there, and the confidence, that Notre Dame's offensive line was able to. I mean, they bullied Clemson's defensive line without even having a passing attack. I mean, they won that game because of the rushing attack, and they were to have almost 300 rush yards in that particular game.
And this is what's so interesting. Before I let you go again, Jance, this is just on the tip of my tongue. What makes this so interesting, to piggyback off your point, because you said it earlier and I forgot to say it, I love the call out you made on the defensive lineman for Notre Dame. Notre Dame wins the battle of physicality on both sides of the line, but it's outside of that I question. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're right. Because when you look at this passing attack, their best weapon is Michael Mayer, and that's it. It's Michael Mayer, who's their who's on cover as a tight end is uncoverable. I mean, he's their number one option. That dude is just an absolute beast. What he can do, you can line up on the outside, you can line him up in the slot as an inline player and as a blocker, especially what he can do in the run game as an inline blocker. Listen, I don't make a lot of comparisons to Gronk, but as an inline blocker, this dude is a monster, killer as an inline blocker. So that'd be very interesting to kind of see there, but. I mean, besides that, I mean, it's Skiles and Thomas as your outside guys, and that's just about it. And those are kind of okay guys. They just kind of stepped up a little bit. But Drew Pines, this might be a game where they might have to ask him to maybe up it up a little bit. Maybe not throw for 300 or 400 yards. I think if that does happen, I think Notre Dame does win. But we're asking for 200 yards at least. And I don't know if they're ready to give him that much uptime. Because, again, they want to protect the football, right? They want to protect the football, establish a ground game, and rely on the defense. That's how Notre Dame wins these games. But when you're going against Lincoln Riley and and like you said before, how Lincoln can scheme up a defense and pretty much make them look like fool's gold, how Caleb Williams can do. USC, not the greatest, but they also got pass rushers themselves. They got two dudes that are in the top 10 in the nation in sacks.
They got the sack leader, or depending on where you look, he's tied.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna butcher the name. So I'm just gonna
Trojan. If you know how to say it, could you actually sound it out in the chat for us? Because I would be very interested in learning how to correct. I've heard announcers butcher it so many times.
They also have guys that can rush the quarterback, right? They got guys, and they know how to force turnovers, right? Their defense has not been the best, but one thing that they've done all year round, they know how to force turnovers. They know how to capitalize off opportunities, very similar to what TCU does. So it's interesting because you have a Notre Dame team who recently now they're not turning over the ball, they're playing more conservative, and then you have another team that's more aggressive and a team that capitalizes off of opportunities. It's going to be interesting, man. Just when you actually take a look at the philosophies, it is just like
is this the matchup of the week? I mean, I know that the game obviously is the game of the week. Michigan, Ohio State, that's the game of the week. That's not in question. But from a schematic matchup perspective, name me a more entertaining matchup than this. Goodness gracious.
They're polar opposites. They're polar opposites of each other, man. One of them is your prototypical pro-style offense that I mean, we're talking old school Wisconsin, Iowa type football type of team. And the other team is just a super high-powered offense that can score 40 on you in a blink of an eye. But again, like I said, I mean, USC was in a very similar game in September against Oregon State. It was very similar, physical game where they had to rely on their defense, and they frustrated Caleb Williams. Why? Because they contained him inside. They put him in the pocket. He couldn't scramble on the outside, and they kept him in the pocket, and that frustrated Caleb. And he tried to do plays that, that could have been costly. So it'll be interesting to see how Notre Dame decides to kind of scheme that up.
Trojan, you should have seen me, man. Whenever I was learning like JT Tuimalau and Francis Mawanoa, I would go and I would find the coaches that like worked with them, and I would find like Rivals or 24/7 or On3 when they would interview their coaches or the player, and I would write down the name and how to pronounce it.
Oh, you should have seen DJ's name. I had to learn
DJ
that.
Uangalele? Yeah.
Yeah, I had to watch the under the radar videos when the high school announcer, when they would just call his name. I literally had to learn it because the announcers kept butchering his name, and then Tua Tagovailoa had to God,
Yep,
I mean that. Oh boy.
This is something I want to hit before we move on. And frightening, I'm going to get to your comment here in a bit. Actually, I'll do that right now while it's on the mind. How are you always late? I'll give you a TLDR about the Texas synopsis we had. Great win. Bijan is the best running back in America. I believe he should be in New York. Interested to hear from you on that. But I want to address this right here. Caleb has improved on reading defenses. Mars, he has. How much so? I don't know. And guys, I'm not saying that to try and down him. I don't know, because I don't know that he's played a defense that's really capable. Oregon State did their thing, right? They made him uncomfortable. But we don't know that we've seen defenses have the ability to scheme to take advantage of any area they think they could have an advantage over Caleb Williams. This is a game where we're going to get a much clearer indication of where Caleb is. But Mars, to your point, and Chris, I said I was going to give you your flowers, and here it is. That game against UCLA, I don't care if your defense is bad, like bad, like 120th, and to go for 500 yards at a 75% completion percentage and 12 yards a pop. That's elite. Nuts. I don't care who you're playing. That's elite. We see teams play Tennessee's defense, which is 128th in the nation against the pass, and they don't sniff those numbers. That was an elite game by Caleb Williams. I mean, unbelievable what he did against UCLA. If he shows up like that, I just don't know if Notre Dame has the offense to do it. Now, there was something I did want to address, because I had some back and forth on this. Does USC control their own destiny? Jance, you said no. I'm going to make the case of yes, and here's why. People in the comments are saying you'd put in a one-loss Ohio State or a one-loss Michigan over them. Here's my counter argument to that, guys. A lot of the arguments we're making for USC not making it being that they haven't played anybody. Outside of the game this weekend, who has Ohio State or Michigan played that you're just looking at and saying, oh, that's a great win? Ohio State struggled against Maryland. So a lot of the same arguments we're making against USC, should Ohio State or Michigan lose, not have a conference championship, I can't justify putting them in over USC if USC wins out with the conference championship, because USC would have downed ranked teams. In fact, they would have downed UCLA. They would have downed Notre Dame if they win, and then the conference. That's 3 ranked wins. That's tough. Chris, what do you think?
The conference championship means the most, in my opinion. I think that they're going to look at that and say, I mean, hey, you may have been the better team over the part of the year, but where it counts going into November, if they're able to, I mean, who else is going to be in the Pac-12 championship game? Is it Oregon?
It's either.
If Oregon loses to Oregon State, Washington's number 2. But if Oregon beats Oregon State, they're in.
Okay, exactly. So,
either way, a great test.
Yeah. So with that being said, if they're able to beat Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game, I mean, it's going to be hard to keep them out.
Yeah, and I see a lot of Notre Dame defense hasn't played an offense. And hey, Trojan, you know what? That's 100% true. We talk about Notre Dame, or USC hasn't seen a defense like Notre Dame. And you know what, Trojan, to be 100% fair, the inverse of that is also true. Notre Dame hasn't seen an offense like this, not like this, where it's just like you look and it's killer, 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 killer. And you look at the guy's team and killer.
But here's the thing. We, as much as people, especially Trojan, love Lincoln Riley, we
have seen him. Yes, no doubt.
We've seen him falter. And the whole thing is if you take those big ass chunk plays away, and you make Caleb work the field. I don't care if Caleb is playing out his freaking mind. Make him work the field and make them work against the clock, which they don't want to do early in the game. They want to score. That can't be the thing. You take away some of those big plays or whatever, and you're making them run screens and different things like that, and make Lincoln Riley get cute with his play calling. And that's a big factor as well. If he's going to get cute early on, you have to punish his ass. There's no way. You have to punish him. That's what a lot of teams do, and that's what a lot of teams that had success against Lincoln Riley would do. All of the cute stuff, all of the cute formations, they read that stuff like a book, and they were able to take that away, and that really hindered him to where he was like, okay, we got to get back to us. And it took them maybe a drive or two to actually get back into rhythm to do what they needed to do, right? So, again, it really boils down to you can keep all those chunk plays out of there. You can keep Caleb contained, and you're able to make them work the field. You're able to do that, then you're going to have a hell of a day.
You know what? I'm thinking about the matchup a little bit. USC has played a very similar team to Notre Dame. They played Utah. Utah was very similar as far as their weapons, as far as how they scheme a little bit. Well, more of their offense. Their defense is nowhere close to Marcus Freeman. But as far as their offense goes, it's very similar, right? Utah had their tight end that went off because they didn't have anybody that can pretty much cover them, right? They tried to go on a nickel-based package look. They tried to have the safeties try to cover him on the top. They had a line. I mean, they could not stop him. And that tight end had a career day. He had over 200 yards, close to 200 yards receiving in that game. It was one of the biggest reasons why they won. But Utah was but they were also able to establish a ground game. And Cameron Rising was also another player. Again, he was able to use his legs, and that was able to kind of, that had the ability to kind of butcher. The one thing that I'll give USC kind of credit here is I do kind of wonder if they're going to let the rushing attack start to kind of power up a little bit, because Cameron Rising at least had the ability to throw the football at a high level if he needed to. He had other weapons besides the tight end that he can really distribute the ball to. Notre Dame has one target in Michael Mayer, and you have other guys like Skiles and Thomas that can make plays, but they didn't. Notre Dame, for the entirety that Drew Pine is he's been able to get in there, they haven't had to rely on his arm, and honestly, they don't want to rely on his arm. They simply want to slow down the clock, rely on the ground game, and use their defense. But there are other situations like the Navy game where Navy put up 32 points in that game, and they actually had a lot more success throwing the football, a triple option team throwing the football than they did rushing. So this is a good Notre Dame team, but they're not dominant. They're not physical over. I mean, again, they don't really show up and have Clemson type performances every single week. So it's also a very similar situation as what type of Notre Dame team are you going to get? Can they force them in a position where they say, you know what, we're going to stack the box, we're going to challenge, we're going to play some cover zero. We are going to attack that rushing attack, and we are going to force you to throw the football. We you make us earn your respect. So I do kind of wonder from a schematic standpoint, is this a little bit easier for USC to defend compared to what Marcus Freeman has to scheme up for against Caleb?
See, the thing, if the reason why I say Travis Dye was so key is kind of alluding back to PG's comment. If I'm Marcus Freeman, I'm going to base out of a too high safety look. I'm going to really make Caleb read. But if you have Travis Dye, if you're Lincoln Riley, you can hammer away and try and get them out of that too high safety look. Bring one safety into the box, go to a one high safety look. Yeah. At which point you can take it. I'm not saying they can't do that. I'm saying the path to doing so is really difficult. Yeah. And Trojan, this is the point I was making. If this gets into a shootout, my answer is no. No, I don't. I would actually argue instead, I would trust the defense for Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman's scheming ability over Drew Pine. But if we're talking quarterbacks in a shootout, Caleb wins that. I think everybody on the panel would agree with that pretty wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And I did have a comment I wanted to get to. David, I hear you, but here's the problem. In college football, wins matter. And you're right. The loss Michigan or Ohio State will have had is a better loss. But can we say that if Michigan loses, can we say they would have had better wins than USC? And if the answer to that is no, then I think it's tough. There's a conversation to be had, though. There is a conversation.
It's all about what the playoff committee considers as far as their eye test. Because like I said, I eliminate all the conference titles and all that type of stuff. I throw that out the window because the playoff committee, it's been inconsistent. I mean, one year we can have a team like Ohio State get in without Ohio State, Bama, without winning their divisions, without winning conference titles, and they still get in.
And in other years, it's who knows?
It's inconsistent. So it's all about who they favor, right? Do they like Michigan? And so far, from what we was able to see for the entirety of the year, they have showed the ability to like Michigan, and they have tried to do everything in their power to not get TCU in the top 4, to not consider USC to move up in that spot. So we got to consider that these guys have opinions, and these guys disregard the facts, the clear-cut facts. So right now, Michigan is in the position that they were in for a reason. I don't think it's fair. I think USC, honestly, if we have to look at the resume, I think USC should be a lot higher than what they actually are. But if Michigan, if they lose to Ohio State close, or if Ohio State loses to Michigan close, I think one of those two teams just gets in just based off of that game alone and just based off of their record. If LSU beats Georgia, both those teams are getting in. Hate to say it, but that's just the way it is. SC bias is kind of real. It is what it is there. If TCU goes undefeated, TCU is going to get in. So USC does need a little bit of help. They need a little bit of help, and I think they need to showcase a dominant performance. I think honestly they need to dominate Notre Dame and their Pac-12 championship opponent. They need to dominate both those games and really showcase and prove why they deserve to kind of get in there. Because we have seen before that the playoff committee can literally disregard anything they say, talk about the criteria, except for who they believe is a top 4 team, which is the eye test. So far from what we've seen, Michigan and Ohio State are their favorites. TCU is a team that I think, again, all they need is a loss. It doesn't even matter if they win the Big 12 title. They're gone. Clemson, for the most part, we see they're number 8, and they have one loss, and they're done. I mean, the committee has clearly shown they don't want them in. So it's all about who they want to get in there. And it's, again, Alabama, and maybe we can talk about this in a little bit. They have a shot, a small chance, but a shot if chaos starts.
Don't tell me that.
No, they have a chance. Look at their position. They're number 7.
I know.
And if things go in, they could exactly a 2-loss team could potentially get in the playoffs. So
Bama hasn't earned it.
Hold on, I have it here.
Bama hasn't earned it.
TCU loses in the Big 12 championship game to K-State or Texas.
They're done.
LSU loses to Georgia in the SEC championship.
LSU will be out.
USC loses to either Notre Dame or in the Pac-12 championship, and then Clemson loses in the ACC championship to North Carolina. That's how Bama.
I think Clemson's out regardless. I think that loss to Notre Dame just puts them out.
We just pissed Ty off. That's how it is. I don't want to hear that.
No, I hear y'all. I know there's a path. Bama has not earned it. They had the opportunity and they squandered.
No, we have not.
They have not earned it. And and y'all know me. I'm going to be consistent because I like 4 teams, right? And I'm going to remain consistent. You got to earn it, and they haven't. They have not. Just personally for me, Mark, if you're from Guam, man, thank you so much for joining us this evening. That's awesome. Now, Frightening, you missed this earlier, and I'm interested in hearing from you on this. I was talking about Quinn Ewers, and I see you're talking about, he wants to hear from you, Chris. He says Gabriel's not a Power 5 starter, and he said he tried to tell you that, and he's interested in your take now. But Frightening, I think y'all have a little bit of a question mark at QB too. I know that Quinn had a 75% completion percentage today, but before today, over the past 4 games, hasn't he averaged like 43.4% completion percentage? Which young, but that's objectively not good. I think where Quinn Ewers was automatic during the early portion of the season, I will argue against anybody saying he's a bust. He's not a bust, but I think it's a bit more of a question mark than people are admitting. And 2 people in the Texas circle have told me before the season they were very concerned about his accuracy over the middle. Oh, you already said the same. You and me. We're symbiotic, no? Look at this. This is why we get along. Now, it is time to move on to the Iron Bowl, right? The game. That ugly flag Chris has back there.
I wish I could just light it up.
Oh, let me move out of the way for y'all to see it real quick.
Oh, look at that, Chance. They have 2 national championships.
Oh.
I remember getting a third national championship with Nick Saban. No, the game, guys. Matt, Auburn wins. Mars, before we jump, Mars says, what's going on with Quinn? He's just young, man. Like I said, I'll argue with anybody saying Ewers is a bust. He's not. He's a young quarterback. He needs to grow. But there are questions, and he's going to have to work through some things this offseason. But the talent is 100% there. He just needs to work through it. But for the game this weekend, I'm going to keep it short. I'm going to keep it sweet. Auburn has responded very well to Cadillac Williams. They have responded very, very well to Cadillac Williams. Alabama has one job: take away the run. Stop that. You take away the run, Auburn is dead in the water. They have not been able to stop the run. And if Jahmyr Gibbs is back healthy, he and Jace McClellan, as long as Bill O'Brien does not go away from the run, which they've done consistently this year, God knows why, Bama should be able to win this game by 14. And that's my pick, is Bama by 14. One, we're playing at home. Bama has been statistically better at home than away this year. If this was in Jordan-Hare, goodness gracious, I would be sweating bullets right now. I would not want to play on that cursed stadium this year. That's just meh. I think Alabama by 14. I think this is a game where the rushing attack is going to come together. They're not playing for playoffs, so what are you playing for? Pride. And you know what? At this point, that might be the most important thing. What are you playing for? Play for yourself. Jance, I'm going to start with you. Talk to me about the game.
I would say we're playing for pride right now, man, but the way Bo Scarborough went into the locker room, man, the fact that none of those players were able to respond to his challenge or able to take up his offer. I mean, boy.
I didn't hear about that.
Oh, yeah, Bo Scarborough went into the locker. He went there. He actually went to the locker room. And he pretty much told them off, cussed them out and everything, and told them, listen, if you don't want to be here, get your ass out because you're not living up to the standard. Take away the green mouthpieces, and it's just like it's a whole bunch of drama that went on there. But yeah, that in a way kind of inspired. I mean, Nick Saban was kind of like, yeah, I told you. Like I kind of told you that. Yeah, we got players that are angry. Players are pissed off. But yeah, we have not lived up to the challenge, and he did that literally a day before the Austin Peay game. This game's gonna be close. I got Bama winning this game by 7 points. Auburn, what they can do extremely well, what they've always done really well against Alabama, they know how it's like they know them. They know them by the back of their head. Now, again, this game's in Tuscaloosa, yes, but it's not like we've played really well at home.
No, just better than on the road.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I can't tell. I mean, seriously, I can't tell, but no. Auburn's defense is solid, right? They have a solid defense. They got it, again, as far as talent levels, Bama has better talent. But Auburn they're close, right? They're pretty close. They're on that same stretch mark as Ole Miss, as Tennessee, maybe actually a little bit more talented. But they got NFL prospects all over their defense. Their defensive line is probably going to be one of the better defensive lines that we've played all year. I think very similar, not as good as LSU, but kind of close to it. They're going to be running the football, though. We all know what they're going to do. They're going to establish a ground game. They're going to try to establish a lot more physicality. And normally I will be confident because I'm like, yes, if we can simply stop the run, that'll be the answer. But we tried to do that against Ole Miss, and Ole Miss rushed for 200 rushing yards against us. LSU, we tried to do that against LSU, and LSU rushed for over 200 rushing yards on us. So we've gone against these similar teams, and we have failed to live up to the challenge. Why, for God's know what? Pete Golding, as far as schematics.
A 146. A 146.
The 146. Henry To'o, aka Mr. Softy Wipes. Never stepping into the hole and hitting a player. Literally always have to allow the running back to kind of come to him before he can try to make a play on the ball. It's ridiculous. But I do think that as far as our secondary goes, I do think this is going to be one of our best games. Brian Branch, you can use him more comfortably. You can use DeMarco Helms. He's going to be a lot more in his comfort zone. You can start to bring him up more into more of a linebacking role. So those guys are going to be a lot more comfortable. Jordan Battle, the same thing. The question is, though, is our offensive line. It's really just our offense and Bill O'Brien. What is he going to do? What are you going to do, Bill O'Brien? What are you going to do, right? Are you going to allow more diversity in this offense? Are you going to allow more creativity? Are we not going to be running the same basic 3-4 routes that we do every single week?
And they're layered terribly.
Exactly. Are we going to allow Bryce Young to have to have more control of the offense, or are we going to maybe take it back, take a little bit of that responsibility off his shoulders? We'll see, right? Can Bill O'Brien actually be an offensive coordinator? We'll find out on the next episode. But this game's going to be close. I got this game by 7 points. Bama, for the most part. Like I said, after hearing what Bo Scarborough was able to do at the university, and the fact that the players still could not wake up to the challenge. And we actually played one of our worst games. I mean, again, we ran the ball well, but from what we were able to do top to bottom, if Austin Peay had the same talent as Tennessee was able to have, that game would have been close. Maybe go to overtime. We could have potentially lost that game. It's going to be close, but we'll win it by 7 points. I'll say 28-21.
Yeah, Chris. I don't even know. I don't even know if I want to let him go. Go ahead.
Guys, let's just be honest, okay? Robbie Ashford, thanks Bigsby. Enough said, okay? They're going to get the job done. Go War Eagle. You see the sign behind me, all right? Let me get my hands right there, okay? 2 national championships, one with Cam Newton being the recent one. We're going to revive that magic this weekend. That War Eagle is going to fly across Tuscaloosa. He won't get shot. He's going to be able to just fly. He's going to land on the ground. And he's going to signal what's going to happen, which is going to be a ass-kicking. Auburn by 40 this weekend. I've been waiting on this game all year. I cannot wait. The excitement is just killing me.
They're going to throw toilet papers all across Toombs Street?
Gents, I'm just saying, y'all are probably going to go kill some more trees after this, but I'm just saying that.
Oh, no.
It's going to.
We don't deserve it, man.
It's going to get messy out there.
This game.
So, yeah, like I said, Robbie Ashford and Tanks Bigsby. I'm going with that. That's all I got to say right there.
Gelato, you're witnessing a trolling right now. That's what's happening. And listen, Chris going full troll. Yeah, you're witnessing a trolling of elite. To be fair, and I want to give credit where it's due, as much as it pains me. The man went out of his way to acquire an Auburn sign, right? Like, this is someone committed to the troll, and at some level, I really do appreciate it. You're wrong, and I can't wait to see you again and tell you you're wrong, but I do appreciate the commitment to the troll. Here's the problem, Chris. They have nothing outside of that scares me. I don't know that that's enough against this Alabama defense, just that rushing attack, to really test them. And we have to remember, Ole Miss had a successful rushing attack. Ole Miss also has a quarterback that's really utilizing himself and putting that offense in really advantageous positions for a rushing attack. If Auburn was more well-rounded offensively, I think this would be a much different game, but that's just where I really put hesitation on Auburn, is the lack of fluidity.
Look, y'all sit up here on this panel and tell me, oh, it's a rivalry game. You never know.
You're right.
Not OU Texas, but especially OSU and OU. Y'all like to tell me, oh, anything can happen. Well, it's a rivalry game. Anything can happen. All I'm saying is this right here. Cadillac Williams has those boys inspired. He's inspired. He's loving the position that he's in right now. He's the underdog. Why not him? Why not them? The only part that really that has me struggling with this decision is the fact that y'all are going to play in Tuscaloosa this weekend. Because last year, y'all struggled with a bad Auburn team, even when they had Finley at quarterback. That's what I'm remembering. Okay.
We had a worse offensive line, and they had a much better defensive line.
Our offensive line really hasn't changed.
It's better. It's graded better.
It's a little bit better. I mean, I don't know. Has it really been better? I mean, yeah, Seth is starting. Seth was,
It's not. They're not more talented. Like, you're not going to convince me that a line that loses Evan Neal is going to become more talented, but they're playing better football. They are playing better football.
Guys, are we gonna make this interesting or what? Y'all see me in the DMs in the chat. I got something for y'all. You know.
Where are you at?
I don't even want to know. I feel like it's gonna be some trolls. It's gonna be some troll stuff.
Oh, it's not stuff.
Oh, I gotta hop on my phone. You're making.
Oh, no. I'm just saying. See me after we end this live. Let's make this interesting. Let's have a gentleman's bet. I mean, we can do it right here. We can do it right here live if you want to. But I'm just saying, I don't want to take y'all money. That's the problem.
Chance.
Are you choosing Auburn by 40?
Huh?
You choosing Auburn
They
by
may
40?
not win by 40, but they'll win by as many as Bill O'Brien will let them, because Bill
Okay, now
O'Brien,
that's the best argument you've presented thus far. That's the best argument you've presented thus far.
Y'all can talk about them being bad, but then Bill O'Brien will figure out a way to help Auburn out and make this a.
That's why I got it by 7. I got Bama by 7 points. If it's by, if you want to take the under for that, we can bet on that. I don't mind that, but I think
I'm
7.
not gonna lie, that's the best argument Chris has presented. That Bill O'Brien, yeah, no, you're not wrong there. I don't think this Auburn team has the fluidity it takes to beat Alabama. And in fairness, Alabama won that game last year with a very similar offense to what they're going to be fielding this year. No Jamison Williams, no John Mechie. So that's going to be interesting to see. What does he know that no one else knows? That's what we're all trying to figure out, right? That's what we're all trying to figure out. But Alabama's going to win this game. I have Alabama by 14. I don't. And here's the other thing. Jance, you're right. They have a good defensive line. Didn't they give up close to 1,000 yards rushing in 3 games? Wasn't it like 1,200 yards rushing they had put on them in 3 games? Mm-hmm. It was something dumb. They can't stop the run at all.
Yep. All right. Now, you say that, but here's another thing. Here's another thing to think about. Bill O'Brien schemes you guys to one particular area of the defense, and you run it the entire game. Texas game, you guys ran to the edge every single time. Everybody knew exactly what you were doing. I was like, oh my God. Calls. Yeah, you could run to the middle if you want, but I was like, Jahmyr Gibbs is just running to the edge every single time. And now they put 2 guys over there. Now they put 1 guy over there.
You're right, but guess what? 3 teams have done that against Auburn, and it netted almost 1,200 yards. I like my odds.
Ty, I'm going to put it like this right here. I will overnight this thing to you right here, this banner. If Auburn wins, I want this to be right behind you on the next pod.
I would burn down my house before I put that behind.
Somebody in the comments, they can clip it. They can clip the audio.
I will burn down my house before that's put behind me. I want everybody in here to hear this. We can do a bet, but it will be over my cold body before that thing and those ugly ass colors are sitting behind me. Okay, that's not happening. Y'all want to send me some memorabilia? I'll start a PO box. I'll start putting college. That thing's not going up there, and especially not coming from you.
I'm just saying.
You know what? Most of all, because it's coming from you.
This is the only orange I've ever seen that I say, you know what? This is actually pretty cool. I like the colors. The color scheme is pretty interesting, to be honest with you. Yeah.
No, it's not. And you know what's worse? My old roommate that actually camped at Clemson, he went to Subiaco Academy in Arkansas, and that's their exact same colors. So everything in his room was blue and orange. And every year he would hit me with War Eagle. And if it wasn't for the fact that he was 6'5", 255 pounds, I'd have done something about it. I just wasn't able to do anything.
I'll send it to Jance. How about that?
I'm not wearing. I'm not.
That's better than me. No. Yeah, that'll work. That'll work.
I'm not wearing piss, dog.
Now I'll use it as a doormat. From Jayhawk for my Longhorns. Jesus. Now it is time. It's time. The game of the week. Ohio State, Michigan. Every year, this is a treat. All right, before we get into this game, I want to hear from y'all. I want to hear from people in the chat, because if we're talking bucket list games, right? What's your bucket list game? I think you'd be hard-pressed not to say Ohio State, Michigan, and especially in a year like this with the implications. That would be my bucket list game, is this Ohio State, Michigan matchup. I want to hear from the people in the chat. Jance, what's your bucket list game?
Honestly, it's Notre Dame and USC. Not this one.
Oh, that'd be great.
That is, I cannot wait for it. But no, this game is, I mean, it's gonna be hype, man. But I'll be honest with you, I think Ohio State blows the doors off of Michigan. I think they blow them out. And I think a huge reason why is because of if Blake Corum, if he doesn't play this game, which most likely he's not going to be playing this game, it's going to be a big loss for them. But the bigger loss is now losing you Donovan Edwards. That sucks, because now you have two guys, like you have 2 really good running backs. Now you have to rely on your third string guy, and compared to Ohio State's their third string running back, it's light and day. It's not even close to as far as who has the better offense. It's Ohio State with the rushing attack, and Michigan relies on it. JJ McCarthy, they very similar to Drew Pine. They protected JJ McCarthy. They're not really making him throw, make the reckless decisions. They're not really taking a lot of deep shots. They're not really utilizing a lot of their outside weapons. They've simply relied on their rushing attack with Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, and they had to rely on that defense. That is how they win their football games. And that's, again, last year with the playoffs, you can do that last year because last year, that defense was performing at an all-time level when you had Ajagbo and oh my God, the safety, Hill. When you had Hill and then you had Aiden Hutchinson, yeah, you can do that. And then you had again, the offensive line was a lot better than what it was. Your skill position players were a lot better than what it was last year. And then you had 4 running backs by committee. Yeah, you can do that. But now you're going into this year worse than what you were last year. The offense really hasn't been. I mean, like I said, their best offensive showcasing was in September when they were playing against Blue Mountain State. And then pretty much.
I don't want to hear anything thrown on Coach Marty Daniels.
Hey, yeah.
Oh, and I'm trying, guys. The guy who plays Coach Marty, the GOAT, has expressed interest on coming on the show. Ed Marinero himself may be coming on the show.
Oh my God, the greatest coach of all time.
Yeah, I've been reaching out to him on Twitter. Super cool guy. Was a runner-up in the Heisman Trophy competition, guys, at Cornell. Think about that. That's a man. I mean, beast in the NFL. Jance, back to you. I just wanted to. Well, that was all.
Okay, so yeah, a better phrase would be ITT Tech University. So ITT Tech. So for the most part, again though, they're super reliant on their rushing attack. Now their offensive line is really good. Let's give credit to whatever you're saying, but we also saw improvements from Ohio State's defensive line. I mean, that was kind of the challenge last year. Was going into this year was. Would Ohio State's defensive line, would they show the improvements, right? Would their linebackers show the improvements? And their defensive line has been outstanding. JT Tuamalo has taken his game to a next level.
Wow.
We're starting to see a lot of their 5-star recruits really start to perform at a very, very high level as well. Jack Sawyer's playing really, really well. Their defensive backs, for the most part, they are starting to really step up. That was also another really big question, was how will the defensive backs play? So I think that Ohio State, again, even though for the most part they're not as dominant, they're not that dominant team this year, as far as if we talk about the complete teams in college, and there's really not a lot of them this year, it would probably the closest would be Georgia and Ohio State. Michigan is just that one team where, because the Big Ten is so, I mean, again, and I will always say this, we criticize USC, right? A lot of people criticize USC because of the level of competition they played against, and they also want to criticize the Pac-12. But the Pac-12 and the Big 12 has had possibly the best quarterback play, I think, in college, right? I mean, the Pac-12, I mean, you got Michael Penix Jr., you got Cameron Rising. You have, of course, Caleb Williams is also there as well. Bo Nix has taken his game to another level. You had the one kid, the Ward kid at Washington State. You look at the Big Ten Conference, besides C.J. Stroud, can you name me another quarterback that's actually been good or close to the level of those guys in the Pac-12? I don't think you can name one. It's been media. I mean, the second best quarterback, arguably,
might be Baby Tua.
Talia might just, I mean, and again, Talia's not a bad quarterback, but we all know he's not on the level of those guys. So yeah, I mean, that's your top 2 quarterbacks. Then you have the Penn State quarterback, which we all know is horrible. But no, the play, Big Ten play as far as their offense has been absolutely horrendous. So it's kind of been more of an easier road for Michigan. So give me Ohio State. Honestly, I think this is going to end up in a blowout. The fact that Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum are not playing this game, I think that's the kill blow. I think Ohio State blows them out, and Michigan's out of the conversation for the playoffs.
Chris, what are you thinking?
Well, first off, to answer your question, I say if there is a game right now that's on the top of my bucket list, and that's because we're not in the SEC yet, definitely would be Bama versus LSU in Death Valley.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's especially when both teams are really good. I mean, I know that atmosphere is crazy. Obviously, OU going to either one of those places, that's going to be on the tops of it. But at the same time, that's it. Going into this game, one thing that I would say is this right here: Ohio State wins, and I think they win big. The reason why I think that they win big tomorrow is simply because I like JJ McCarthy, but he's another guy that I'm still not going to say he's a bust, but I don't know if he's that guy. Obviously, I don't believe McNamara was the guy to lead them to where they went. But if they have the lulls, the stalls that they've had against some of these other teams, tomorrow against Ohio State, where they're going 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, touchdown, 3 and out, 3 and out. It's gonna be a long day for them because Ohio State will be able to move the ball. The whole thing is that we're gonna see what Michigan is made of tomorrow, and it's gonna be put up or shut up. It's gonna be on. They're not gonna be at home like they were last year, and they don't have. I think that they have a good defense, but I'm still not convinced on them, to be quite frank with you. Offensively, I think wide receiver wise, they're still not that explosive. I think that their offense is really predicated on the run. If Corum is out and guys like that are not playing, then it's going to be a long day because you're putting a lot on JJ McCarthy's hands. And then, gosh, I can't think of his name right now, but give credit where credit's due. The defensive coordinator for Ohio State has put those guys in a lot
Knowles.
Knowles position. That's the reason why I say I got like what was the D lineman that you were talking about?
JT Tuimalau. Yeah.
JT.
He definitely came on. You can see
unbelievable.
He was, some of the things that he's able to do, especially with those interceptions and all the rest of that stuff. He's been great. I was really eager to see what Jack Sawyer is going to be like because I thought Jack Sawyer would be the guy who would really kind of separate himself. I think he's looked really, really good this year. And I think that's the one thing that was missing from the defensive line last year was that guy, that name, right?
Zach Harrison also played really well. Like he stepped up his game as well.
The past 2 or 3 years for Ohio State, they've had defensive linemen go so high in the draft that you just forgot. And last year was just kind of like an anomaly in itself where you had a lunch pill group, but you didn't have that guy, that star like you normally had, where people are trying to like Chase Young, basically. You haven't had that since him. So these guys are starting to step into their own. I'm not saying that they're Chase Young type guys, but I mean, you could say that they're Sam Hubbards, right? So you like what you're seeing from them in that secondary or whatever. And we all know how that Knowles defense works. It's really tough to score on that defense whenever it's clicking, right? So the thing about it is, I still don't think that they've even really touched. I think they've only touched the surface of what they could be because it's still a first-year install. And I think that they're just letting athleticism carry them a lot more than just, really knowing the technique that it takes to run that defense. But like I said, I got Michigan big this year. I think they're pissed. They're coming in here. They're going to be hungry for this win. I think that they get it. And I think that Ryan Day is definitely going to run up the score if he can because coach on the other sideline has been talking like a lot of yak. So for years now, even when they got beat, he was not humble in defeat. He was still talking noise. So I think this is a perfect day that you see the offense for Ohio State just click on all cylinders and they get the win and they win big.
Yeah, I think my biggest question, and go Pats, I'm interested if you've heard something. I've been on the lookout. You being the Michigan fan, I will defer to you here, although I am interested. So if you're in here, please hop in the chat and let me know the running back status y'all have. I know Harbaugh has been mum. He hasn't said much. Now, interesting to note, apparently yesterday, Blake Corum, or maybe it was Wednesday, Pat, if I'm wrong on that, please correct me. That way I know from my own knowledge. He was passing out turkeys, and they asked him about the knee. He said he'll be fine. He'll be playing. And if you're Michigan, you have got to have him playing. This is where, guys, as good as Michigan's defense has been, and I said this yesterday, I don't know exactly how good Michigan's defense is because I haven't seen them play an offense that I think is really, really scary, dangerous, but I do know it's good. right? I do know it's a good defense. I think anybody can watch them play and be like, yeah, it's a real solid defense. But if you don't have the rushing attack, to Corum playing, yeah, and Pat, that's exactly where I'm going with my man. That's exactly where I'm going with this.
Because you can't. I mean, Donovan. I don't think. And again, for the most part, Pat, you could definitely correct me on this. I don't think they're having Donovan Edwards either. You cannot lose both guys. You can't.
That's tough.
Because then LJ Stokes is the guy. That's the guy that has to be a running back. You can't do it.
And you don't have the consistent passing game to where you feel very comfortable going up against that Ohio State passing attack, really trying to go tit for tat. We could talk about Michigan's defense, deservedly so. I think it deserves a lion's share of the conversation. But Chris, to your point, Jance, to your point, both of you brought it up. Jim Knowles has this Ohio State defense looking right. Looking really right. That looks like it was one of the better hires of the offseason. Really hurt for Oklahoma State not to have him there. So that's something we've got to watch. I'm going to pick Michigan, or I'm going to pick Ohio State to win this game, guys. I think it's going to be very close. Quite simply put, and Pat, I am sorry to say this, I just think that right now they have more ways to hurt a team than Michigan does. And through 4 quarters, I just think that that's going to benefit them more so, and especially if Corum's health is in question. I think y'all have a great defense. I really do. But I don't know if it's good enough to allow you to rely on 10 points or even 17 points to win this game, right? Because, I mean, I want to hear from both of you before we wind this down. Chris, I know you said you got to head out soon, and deservedly so. It's been 2 hours, and we're still going strong. So if you need to go here, I'll let you go right after I have you answer this. I don't think 17 points is going to win this game. Do you?
Hell no.
then it gets into the conversation I'm having. That's where it gets real hard for me to side with Michigan, as much as I would love to see Michigan win this game. Jance, what do you think? Because if Corum's not a go, can they generate the points?
No, they can. And in the Illinois Illinois game, they clearly show that they don't have the ability to really do that.
And Ohio State's a better defense.
Blake Corum has averaged 28 carries a game. I mean, we talk about Bijan Robinson and the workload that he's had. Blake Corum has had very similar to Cam Brown in Illinois, how he gets over 30 carries a game. If Blake Corum doesn't have a good game, that's it. Because JJ McCarthy, he's not. I mean, who is he throwing it to? Ronnie Bell?
No.
Shoemaker?
Let's be real. I hate to do this to him. Michigan is one bad call away from not being undefeated right now, because I that pass interference call, that wasn't pass interference in my book. That's just me. I'm talking about against Illinois last week. I don't know if you guys saw that play.
I don't know the exact play you're talking about. I can't say I know.
That was one of pretty much that's what kind of put the dagger in them. Is that pass interference basically cost Illinois the game, because then after that, obviously they scored, and that was a pivotal down, and they probably would have got the ball back and been able to run their offense and be able to probably run the clock out. But that being said, like I said, 17 points is not going to cut it. If this is a close game, it's going to be a 28-24, 24-27 type game. If not, if it goes into the 30s or whatnot, I'm leaning with Ohio State, because here's the thing. Ohio State's going to be, those receivers all over the place. Is it Jigma playing or no?
I don't know, but even if he's not, Harrison Jr. has been really, really solid this year.
Harrison, Emeka
Egbuka.
They've been great. Obviously, if Travion Henderson is healthy this game, that's going to be an obvious plus.
Now, if I'm playing devil's advocate, Ohio State has got some questions in terms of health at the running back position too.
Yeah, but they show the ability that even without Mayan or without Travion, they can still run the ball at a high level. Michigan has not shown that ability at all. It is a drop for Ohio State. It's a little bit of a drop off, but it's not a clear, like
not
Michigan
the same
clear cut drop off from Jonathan and Blake.
Here's the thing to keep an eye on for both quarterbacks. Okay, in my opinion, the winner of this game is going to basically be able to tell you a story. The winner of this game is that their quarterback is going to be able. We're going to be able to look back at this game and say, okay, the reason why Ohio State won is because C.J. Stroud said, "I'm going to work the field to open you up," or vice versa. J.J. McCarthy said, "I'm going to work the field to open you up." Because those chunk plays, a lot of those things right there, they're going to come off of gashing those zones that each team is going to want to run at some point in time. And like I'm saying, both teams they've as far as running towards the finish line, they've kind of been a bit sluggish, a bit lethargic. Maybe they've overlooked some games, maybe they've overlooked some teams. But like I said, it's going to boil down to who can tell that story of I carved you in the intermediary game to open you up elsewhere. And I think that's exactly what Ryan Day is going to do. He's going to try to lull them asleep to be able to open up more of that offense. And I think C.J. Stroud, is just on him to make the right plays. Not overthrow guys, but just make the right plays. Because he struggled just a little bit this year with some of his passing and different things or whatnot. Some of his reads, I would say.
I looked up the weather because I don't know if y'all have followed. Ohio State offensively has really struggled in inclement weather.
Yeah.
Really. And so far, forecast for tomorrow is 55 and sunny in Columbus. Couldn't ask for much better.
What's the wind?
I didn't see that. Let me go back.
If it's high winds, they have. I mean, CJ, he has struggled. I mean, like I said, he doesn't have that Josh Allen type of power where he can push the ball through those winds. If it's windy, it's going to be an ugly game.
Projected is a 8 mile an hour winds tomorrow.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, not great. Enough to really make a substantial difference. Yeah, I think that if Corum was 100%, we'd have a different conversation here. Now, whether or not that would affect the outcome in my analysis, I'm not 100% certain. I really don't know the answer to that. But I do know that the way we would get there would be very, very different. Would be very, very different. I think that whenever you look at what Corum and Donovan Edwards would allow Michigan to do, coupled with that defense, you can play keep away.
Uh-huh.
And if you can play keep away from that Ryan Day offense, I like your opportunities. But can they do that consistently without those two running backs? That's the question. Now, Chris, I'll let you get out of here. You've been with us for, 2 hours and 10 minutes. This has been a long stream. Guys, we're probably going to end it here. You have any final pressing questions, go ahead and let them in the chat. Until then, gents, where can the people find all your great content?
Find me on YouTube, Gent Sports. Busy college football weekend, so I'll be doing a lot of stuff over there. You can also find me on Twitter. If you want to, hit me up over there, have some conversation. Gent716. Buffalo fan base, catch me over there on YouTube. We cover a lot of Bills content, a lot of NFL content, including college football recaps over there as well. So again, we moved on for Twitter. So again, definitely follow us more on Twitter than more on the YouTube side, but definitely check me over there. And man, like I said, I'm excited for next week, man. But man, that's all I got.
Man, Chris, I like this camera view much better. There's a noticing lack of an Auburn flag. And I really appreciate that right now. So where can the people find all your great content?
Guys, you can find me at the Horns Down Podcast. You can find us at Google, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you have podcasts at. Guys, you can also find us on Twitter at the Horns Down Pie. You can find me at Chris with a K.
I can't stop his camera.
Boomer Sooner and Go War Eagle.
I could mute him, but that I just want to stop his camera.
You can't take away the picture unless you got to kick him out.
Why? Yeah.
That's just foul. That's just foul. Guys, thank you so much for being here. Frightening. Hey, man, you got to be on time. You got to be on time. Pat, thank you for joining us this evening, man. I like I said, I wish I could argue with more confidence that Michigan would win. I think y'all have had a great season. And if Corum and Edwards, if I felt like they were 100%, I would say that they were a go, but it is what it is, man. It is what it is.
Hey, Ty, acknowledge it.
Acknowledge what?
I see shit on my screen. I don't know what that is. What is that?
I'm not acknowledging anything. That's not happening. That's I implied I had an underlying thing. Oh, I have no idea. But guys, thank you for being here this evening. We'll see you on Monday, 5:30. Talk about the week we just had. Really get a clear indication as to playoffs. We're going to have a lot of fun next stream. Monday, 5:30. Can't wait to see y'all. Until then, that's it.
Go
See ya.
War Eagle.
No, you do not. And we're now
Auburn by 40.